Chapter 13:13. Dr. Chuigu Yundong soaked the ribs in clean water and took out the fish that had already been processed. There was no shortage of aquatic products on the ship. There were fish sold on the ship every day, so Gu Yundong made different fish to eat. Braised fish, steamed fish, pickled fish, sweet and sour fish, spicy boiled fish, fish head tofu soup, fried fish pieces, and so on. It had only been 2 days and there were still many things on her menu that had not been tried. Today with the pork rib soup she wanted to make fried fish. Gu Yundong was thinking about the steps when she felt a gaze on her. She turned her head slightly and met the gaze of the girl who was brewing the medicine. The girl immediately retracted her gaze and went to open the medicine jar. Gu Yundong raised her eyebrows and continued with her work. However, after a while the girl looked over again. Gu Yundong turned around and she looked away. This repeated several times until another girl came in from outside. Only then did the girl leave with the medicine jar. The girl who came in later was a maidservant of a madam on the ship. She was in charge of the madam's food and had become familiar with Gu Yundong over the past 2 days. The maid greeted Gu Yundong and got busy. After a while, she leaned over and whispered, "Mrs. Shao, do you know who the girl who went out just now was?" "I don't know." Gu Yundong's hands did not stop. She asked casually, "Do you know her?" "No." The maidservant shook her head. Gu Yundong. Unexpectedly, the maidservant quickly said, "She boarded the ship from Heading Manor today. The moment she came up, she saw many people getting seasick. They felt terrible and vomited at the side. She said that she was a doctor and borrowed the kitchen from the crew to start brewing medicine. Then she gave it to those who got seasick. This is the 3rd jar she brewed." Gu Yundong was surprised. "Doctor?" She thought of the girl's expressionless face just now. With such a cold expression she really did not look like a doctor. The maidservant nodded. "My madam said that this girl is a good person. She provided the medicine for free and didn't require money. Mrs. Shao, isn't your maidservant seasick? Why don't you ask her for it too?" Gu Yundong asked, "Are those people feeling better after taking the seasickness medicine?" "A little better, but you know this boat has been sailing all this time. Even after taking the medicine they still don't look very energetic. But at least they're not vomiting anymore. It's not that uncomfortable." Gu Yundong nodded. Shuetao had also taken Brother Shao's medicine. Not long after, the girl returned and continued to brew medicine. The maidservant did not speak to Gu Yundong again. The 3 people in the kitchen quietly went about their business. After cooking dinner, Gu Yundong placed the food in the food box and carried it out. However, when she left, Gu Yundong could clearly feel that the medicine lattice gaze was fixed on her back. Gu Yundong frowned. She did not like this feeling. If there was anything, just say it. What did he mean by sizing her up from time to time? She frowned as she headed for the stateroom. Unexpectedly, as soon as she reached the deck, she saw Shao Qingyuan talking to a middle-aged man. Gu Yundong looked over and hesitated for a moment, but did not go over. She just carried the food box into the cabin first. When she came out to look for Shao Qingyuan again, she saw a person standing beside the middle-aged man and Shao Qingyuan. Gu Yundong narrowed her eyes. Coincidentally, that person also turned to look at her. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 13:14. Don't worry, she doesn't like me. It was the girl who was brewing medicine in the small kitchen. Gu Yundong's gaze met hers. A different expression appeared on the other party's expressionless face. She raised her chin slightly and then looked away as if nothing had happened. Gu Yundong. She finally understood why this woman often sized her up in the small kitchen. Gu Yundong did not respond. She turned around and entered the cabin. On the other hand, the lady was slightly stunned. Then she sneered. Shao Qingyuan quickly ended the topic and followed her into the cabin. As soon as he entered, he realized that the other 3 were already eating. No one was waiting for him. Shao Qingyuan was stunned. He did not say anything and sat beside Gu Yundong. "Hungry?" "Not really. But it's getting late. I didn't know how long you'd be chatting with others. If you come back too late, well, I'll have cold food. The temperature is so low now." Shao Qingyuan was surprised. She saw him chatting with someone? Shaowen was especially good at reading people's expressions. When he saw that the atmosphere was not right, he quickly picked up his food and stood up. "He'll go back to my room to eat." Although Tong Shuetao was a little slow because of seasickness, she also got up and left unsteadily. The cabin door closed, leaving the 2 of them alone in the room. Shao Qingyuan smiled and hugged Gu Yundong's waist. "Since you saw me talking to them, why didn't you go over and meet them?" "Why should I?" There was a beauty beside us. Shao Qingyuan was stunned again. Then he looked at her with bright eyes. Are you jealous? Yundong was speechless. She took the bowl that belonged to him and stuffed it into his hands. No. She was very reasonable. Why would she be jealous of such an unfounded thing? However, Shao Qingyuan was very happy. He was not in a hurry to eat. He placed the bowl back on the table and began to talk about the identity of the person just now. That person is an imperial physician from the capital. An imperial physician in the capital? Shao Qingyuan nodded. He's Imperial Physician Cui, who's in charge of vaccination in the Heading Prefecture. Now that the deadline to return to the capital is close, he's naturally on the ship back to the capital. That girl is his daughter and has been learning medicine from Imperial Physician Cui. No wonder she knew Shao Qingyuan. The Imperial physicians from the capital should have people protecting them, right? Because of the special situation, Shao Qingyuan didn't have any guards protecting him. There are indeed two, but I don't know where they are. Usually, the guards don't interfere with Imperial Physician Cui's matters. They only appear when he encounters danger. Yundong glanced at him. Are you very familiar with Imperial Physician Cui? Not really. Imperial Physician Cui and Imperial Physician Song are friends, so we met a few times. This time we greeted each other. Then Miss Cui? Does she like you? Shao Qingyuan raised his eyebrows and suddenly fell silent for a moment, as if he was considering how to answer this question. Yundong pinched him. Is it that difficult? It's not difficult, Shao Qingyuan immediately replied. Imperial Physician Cui did vaguely mention marriage, but after knowing that I already had a fiancée, he didn't mention it again. As for Miss Cui, he frowned and said affirmatively, she doesn't like me. Are you sure? Don't worry, she doesn't like me. Back then, when she found out that I proposed the cowpox vaccination method, she even scolded me for being boorish and lacking medical ethics. Do you think she likes me? If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 13-15. None of your business. Yundong. She might not have liked him previously, but after the success of the cowpox vaccination method, it was hard to say if Miss Cui liked Shao Qingyuan. However, only she knew this the best. Yundong did not say anything else. She just reached out and pinched his face. But your face is getting more and more attractive. I might really have to hide you one day. I want to hide you too. Shao Qingyuan lowered his head and pressed down. I have no one else. Really? Shao Qingyuan smiled. His wife did not seem to know how charming she was. Not to mention the people far away, just Duan Qian, whom she had recently met in Wanqing Prefecture. When that kid first saw Yundong after he woke up, the surprise in his eyes was very obvious. Later, when he saw her husband, he hid the feelings in his eyes. However, Shao Qingyuan was a sharp person. How could he not tell? If Duan Qian had not been gentlemanly enough to keep his distance knowing that Yundong was married, Shao Qingyuan would never have cooperated with him. However, he and Duan Qian had a tacit understanding. There was no need to tell Yundong about this. Eat. Yundong did not dwell on the matter of Imperial Physician Cui and his daughter. She rested after eating. She continued to do her own thing, but the atmosphere on the ship was obviously different from the previous 2 days. There were more and more voices about Miss Cui's Bodhisattva heart. Most of these people had taken Miss Cui's seasickness medicine after they got seasickness. Yundong only shook her head when she heard that. The effects of seasickness did not last long. They had taken the medicine today, but if they did not go ashore tomorrow, they would still vomit uncomfortably. Miss Cui might be able to take care of things for a while, but could it be that she could always provide medicine for free? Did she have it? Yundong smiled and turned to enter the kitchen. Unexpectedly, Miss Cui was already there. She was still sitting in front of the medicine jar, making the medicine. Seeing her come in, she was slightly stunned for a moment before continuing to work. Yundong did her own thing, but Miss Cui slowly began to lose her composure. From time to time she would raise her head and size her up. But since she did not speak, Yundong did not speak either. It was as if she was the one who was impatient. She was not the one with ulterior motives. As expected, not long after, Miss Cui couldn't help but ask, "You're Shao Qingyuan's countryside wife?" Countryside wife? This form of address did not seem wrong. Yundong turned around and wiped her hands on her apron. This action indeed made Miss Cui frown. Yundong found it funny. "Miss Cui, what's the matter?" Miss Cui? After pondering these words carefully for a moment, Miss Cui suddenly looked a little happier. It seems that Shao Qingyuan has mentioned me to you. Gu Yundong resisted the urge to roll her eyes. What exactly do you want? Miss Cu's face returned to its expressionless state. You seem to be very good at cooking. You make 3 meals a day quite sumptuously. Do you know how to cook since you were young? Shao Qingyuan seems to be very satisfied with your culinary skills. Gu Yundong would be a fool if he did not understand the meaning behind her words. Didn't she just say that she was a countryside girl who was useless except for cooking? She could only serve men in such a way? Gu Yundong smiled and said slowly and elegantly, "What business is it of yours? If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 13:16. Gu Yundong is an old woman. Chui Lan's expression froze. She looked at Gu Yundong in disbelief. You, unbearably vulgar, simply unbearably vulgar. This woman was indeed a country bumpkin who could not be shown off. Although Shao Qingyuan was also a country bumpkin in the past, he knew that he was motivated and daring. He was bold and would only continue to advance in the future. His future was limitless. But what about the woman in front of her? She had been observing her for 2 days. For the past 2 days, this woman had been wearing gray clothes and staying in this small kitchen all day to show off her pitiful culinary skills. She didn't work hard at all to be worthy of Shao Qingyuan. Other than cooking, eating, and sleeping, she would occasionally go to the deck to enjoy the breeze. What was even more unbelievable was that she clearly had a maidservant by her side, but the maidservant had been hiding inside and slacking off because of seasickness. She did not say, scold, or sell her. She actually had to serve her food. A woman like Gu Yundong could not keep up with Shao Qingyuan at all. Even a maidservant could climb over her head and lord over her. If she did not have the ability to manage the servants, wouldn't Shao Qingyuan's backyard be in chaos in the future? Chui Lan felt wronged and indignant for Shao Qingyuan. In the end, it all turned into heartache. If they hadn't been engaged long ago, why would Shao Qingyuan marry such an unbearable wife? Gu Yundong did not know that the woman in front of her had a dark expression and her heart was already in turmoil. She had been belittled to the point of being useless. She felt refreshed after saying those words. She ignored Chui Lan and continued to cook. However, after a long time of mental preparation, Chui Lan spoke to her again. "Miss Gu." She suddenly extended her hand. "On account of the fact that I know Shao Qingyuan, I advise you to change yourself. This is the rouge cream I concocted myself. After applying it on your face, it will make your face pale and tender. You won't become an old woman." Gu Yundong was speechless. What was this girl thinking? Her face was originally very fair and tender. It was much better than yours, all right? Just as she thought this, a surprised voice came from outside. "Miss Chui, can I buy a box?" Gu Yundong looked up and saw that the maid whom she knew earlier was looking at Chui Lan happily. She looked a little embarrassed. "Miss Chui is a doctor. Your rouge cream is definitely the best. Can I buy 2 boxes?" "Of course." Chui Lan nodded. "We're all women. We should help each other." Then she looked at Gu Yundong. "Miss Gu, do you want it? I won't take your money." Gu Yundong narrowed her eyes. So that was the case. Chui Lan looked expressionless and straightforward, but she was not unfamiliar with tricks. Gu Yundong glanced at the rouge ointment in her hand and then at the maid. The servant girl was looking at Gu Yundong enviously. After all, Chui Lan did not accept her money. She urged Gu Yundong, "Mrs. Shao, quickly accept it. Don't let Dr. Cui's good intentions down." Gu Yundong smiled and said to Chui Lan, "Sure, but although this is Dr. Cui's kind intentions, I can't take it for free. I'll buy it with silver too." As she spoke, she searched her body but could not find any silver. She was instantly vexed. "I didn't bring any silver. I'll go back and get it now. Dr. Chui, wait for me for a while. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 13:17. In that bunch of cow dung. With that, Gu Yundong put all the dishes into the food box and walked out of the kitchen. However, just as she stepped out, she suddenly stopped. She turned to look at Chui Lan and said in confusion, "By the way, there's a question I've been wanting to ask." "What is it?" Gu Yundong smiled innocently. "Since Dr. Chui knows that I'm married and that my husband's surname is Shao, why do you keep calling me Miss Gu? If you hadn't called me just now, I wouldn't have noticed. I heard that Dr. Cui's family is also a big family in the capital. I've never been to the capital. I don't know if the rules there are different from what I know." Cui Lan's expression suddenly froze, and so did the servant girl, Yuer. Yuer was a maid from a rich family after all. She knew all the twists and turns. After hearing Gu Yundong's words, the way she looked at Cui Lan changed. What did she mean by the rules in the capital were different? There was no one in the capital who called a married woman Mississippi. They were not her family. Cui Lan tightened her grip on the rouge ointment, but her voice was still cold and emotionless. It was a slip of the tongue. I saw that Mrs. Shao was young and in her prime, so I unknowingly called you Mississippi. I won't do it again in the future. Dr. Cui, why are you saying that I'm young again? You just said that I need your rouge cream to not become an old woman. Cui Lan's face twitched slightly. Was this woman really stupid, or was she pretending to be stupid? Women should still take precautions. Gu Yundong was enlightened. She nodded. You're right. Then she left. After leaving, she did not come back. She and Shao Qingyuan ate dinner happily. Shao Wen and Tong Shuetao's food were brought to their rooms. After eating and clearing the dishes, Gu Yundong crossed her arms and stared at Shao Qingyuan from head to toe. The latter felt an inexplicable chill run down his spine under her gaze. What's wrong? Gu Yundong snorted. And you say you're not a femme fatale? Oh? Gu Yundong narrowed her eyes and said, that Miss Cui is very indignant on your behalf. You're outstanding and capable while I only know how to cook. She thinks that you're like a fresh flower stuck in cow dung after marrying me. In that pile of cow dung. Shao Qingyuan frowned. She said that about you? A look for her. Was there something wrong with this Cui girl that made her wife unhappy? Shao Qingyuan stood up and walked out. Unexpectedly, Gu Yundong suddenly stretched out her leg and pressed it against the door, blocking him. She tilted her head and snorted. What's the hurry? Shao Qingyuan lowered his head and held her ankle with his right hand. He moved it up her calf and carried her to sit on the bed. He hugged her waist and said, You're not cow dung. I am. Without you, I would have been trampled to pieces. All right, stop talking. She had just finished her meal and did not want to discuss such a smelly topic, even though she was the one who brought up the cow dung first. If Miss Cui provokes you, he'll go to Imperial Physician Cui and explain. Anyway, we don't have much of a relationship. No need. Gu Yundong only wanted him to make a statement. She would not really blame Shao Qingyuan. Not to mention, I want to see what Miss Cui wants to do. It's a good opportunity for me to practice in advance. Practice? What practice? Shao Qingyuan was puzzled. Gu Yundong smiled and did not answer. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 13:18. Coming to the door. Practicing, of course, was to compete with the girls from these rich families in advance. Based on the current information, Brother Shao's family should be either rich or noble. She did not know if they were easy to get along with. If there was someone difficult to deal with, wouldn't she have to get used to it first? Shao Qingyuan raised his eyebrows, not quite understanding. However, even if Gu Yundong told him not to care about this matter, when Imperial Physician Cui came to visit or invited him to their cabin, Shao Qingyuan still refused. Imperial Physician Cui felt that it was a pity at first, but after a few more times he became dissatisfied with Shao Qingyuan. He felt that if a young man started to be arrogant and rude without taking his senior seriously, he would probably not be able to go far in the future. As for Gu Yundong, she deliberately did not go to the small kitchen from before and changed to another place to continue cooking. As a result, she did not see Miss Cui for 2 days. On the third day, Miss Cui could not hold back and knocked on Gu Yundong's cabin door. As soon as the door opened, she looked inside. Miss Cui's eyes were filled with disappointment and relief when she didn't see Shao Qingyuan. Gu Yundong stood at the door and saw her expression clearly. Miss Cui, why are you here? Mrs. Shao. Cui Lan took a deep breath and looked at Gu Yundong. Last time you asked me for rouge ointment, but I didn't see you in the small kitchen. There were many girls who bought rouge ointment these 2 days. I only have 2 boxes on hand, so I came to ask you if you still want it. Gu Yundong blinked. After a moment she came to a realization. She slapped her forehead and said, Look at me. I forgot about this that day. When I carried the food box back to my room, my husband happened to be talking to me about something. Once he started talking, it was endless. Didn't I forget about this? When I thought about it later, it was already the next day. I thought that it would be fine. It wouldn't be good to look for him again. Cui Lan said, Really? Then why did Mrs. Shao change the kitchen these 2 days? Sigh, it's all because of my husband. Recently he's become more and more picky. He said that the food I cooked 2 days ago always had the smell of medicine, and he ate as if he was drinking medicine. I thought that it was because Miss Chui was brewing medicine at the side? That's why I changed the kitchen. Chuilan was speechless. She actually had a good reason? Gu Yundong tilted her head. I don't want Miss Cui's rouge ointment. My husband doesn't like me to put too much makeup on my face. I have to let you down. Chuilan clenched her fist slightly. This woman kept calling him husband, as if others did not know that their relationship was great. However, there was a saying that went, the more a woman lacked something, the more she cared about it and the more she would show off. She kept mentioning how Shao Qingyuan doted on her and loved her. Wasn't it because she wasn't confident? She narrowed her eyes and sized up Gu Yundong. She had thought that this was an ignorant village woman, but now it seemed that she had some tricks up her sleeve. It was just that these methods were not presentable and she could only show off. Chuilan knew that she was not as eloquent as Gu Yundong, but her brain was better than hers. Since Mrs. Shao doesn't want it, I'll take it back. As expected, she simply put away the rouge cream and turned around to leave. Gu Yundong stood at the door of the cabin and watched her leave with a smile. Only when Chuilan had completely disappeared did she turn around and prepare to close the cabin door. Unexpectedly, two people happened to walk over from the corridor in front. As they walked, they turned their heads to look in Chuilan's direction. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 13-19. About Gu Yundong. Gu Yundong paused and heard the two of them talking softly. This Dr. Chui is not very honest. She only provided the seasickness medicine for 2 days. If you ask her again, she'll claim that it's been used up. If she doesn't want to give it to you, so be it. Why did she have to pretend to be a kind person previously? You don't know, right? In the past 2 days, many girls on the ship have asked Dr. Chui to buy rouge ointment. That seasickness medicine is a business without money. This rouge ointment is the main source of money. Naturally, she's more willing to spend her efforts on it. That's right. Those who need seasickness medicine are all poor people with no money. Those who have money have already prepared it themselves. Perhaps Dr. Chui has brewed medicine for 2 days and despised them. Ah. Don't you have money too? Why are you asking her for seasickness pills? I think the effect is pretty good. It would be a waste not to take it. Their conversation gradually faded away. Gu Yundong secretly shook her head and closed the cabin door. She had long said that Chuilan would not gain anything by doing this. Actually, Gu Yundong was not the only one who heard this conversation. Chuilan was the same. The people who spoke even deliberately ran over to talk about her, ignoring her ugly expression. Chuilan was furious. She had already suffered at Gu Yundong's hands. She did not expect the people she had helped to be so ungrateful. These people were simply ingrates who did not know how to be grateful. She had been kind enough to think for them, but in the end it was her fault. When those people received benefits from others, they would thank them profusely. When they lost these benefits, they would immediately turn hostile. These people would suffer retribution sooner or later. Chuilan took a deep breath, tightened her grip on the rouge cream and opened the stateroom door. When she entered, she saw Imperial Physician Chui grinding herbs with his head lowered. When he heard the sound, he looked up. What's wrong, Laner? You don't look too good. Nothing. Chuilan shook her head. I probably didn't sleep well last night. The cabin next door is too noisy. As she spoke, she helped Imperial Physician Chui pick herbs. When Imperial Physician Chui heard this, he quickly said, Then let's switch rooms tonight. It's quiet here. No need. It's not like it's noisy every day. The guest in the room next door might have had a nightmare last night. It's fine. Imperial Physician Chui did not insist and only let her rest. Chuilan, on the other hand, did her own thing. She lowered her head and looked like she wanted to say something but hesitated. After a long while, she finally looked up at Imperial Physician Chui and asked, Father, have you seen Shao Qingyuan's wife? Imperial Physician Chui was stunned for a moment. He thought for a moment and said, I've seen her from afar once, but I've never spoken to her. What? Have you seen her? Yes, I have, Chuilan said. Father, do you know why Shao Qingyuan married his current wife back then? Imperial Physician Chui stopped grinding herbs. He looked at his daughter and frowned slightly. Chuilan was still the same. There was no expression on her face, but her eyes flickered slightly. Imperial Physician Chui asked, Why are you asking this? Nothing. I'm just curious. I've seen that Madame Shao before. She looks really ordinary. Shao Qingyuan is no longer an ordinary farmer. It's not impossible to find a better one. Imperial physician Cui looked at his daughter seriously for a moment and sighed in his heart. After a long time he said in a low voice, "I heard Imperial physician Song talk about this, Madam Shao. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 1320. Shao Qingyuan's kindness to Gu Yundong. Cui Lan immediately straightened her back slightly and looked at Imperial physician Cui expectantly. Imperial physician Cui put down the tool and recalled what Imperial physician Song had said back then. At that time, Imperial physician Song said with a nonchalant expression, "You're asking about Shao Qingyuan's fiancée? I've seen her before, of course I've seen her. That girl is a little pretty. She's a little smart, but she's not enough in front of me. She runs a small business herself and has a little money. Shao Qingyuan was especially poor in the past. Blah blah blah." At that time, Imperial physician Song spoke in a scattered manner and said whatever came to his mind. At this moment, Imperial physician Cui had to reorganize everything before he said, "Imperial physician Song said that this Miss Gu is a capable person. Her family does some small business. In the past, Shao Qingyuan's family was poor and he didn't have any relatives. It was a problem for him to eat 3 meals a day. Miss Gu and he were neighbors and helped each other. Later on, it was only natural for them to be engaged. I heard that Shao Qingyuan came to the capital to offer the cowpox vaccination method. This Miss Gu supported him wholeheartedly." Cui Lan pondered in her heart as she listened. Shao Qingyuan was very poor in the past and did not have enough to eat. Gu Yundong had helped him a lot. Rather than saying that he liked Gu Yundong, it would be more accurate to say that he was grateful. If he really liked Gu Yundong, why would Gu Yundong always emphasize on that? That was true. Shao Qingyuan was someone who knew how to repay kindness. Otherwise she wouldn't have liked him. Therefore it was impossible for Shao Qingyuan to give up on Gu Yundong. He was not a heartless man and would not do such an ungrateful thing. No wonder Gu Yundong had to personally go to the kitchen to cook. This was to remind Shao Qingyuan of her past kindness. Cui Lan frowned and her expression turned even uglier. Therefore it was impossible for Shao Qingyuan to leave Gu Yundong. Then, what about the other way around? Cui Lan's hands had stopped moving at some point. She sat on the edge of the bed and stared out of the window, seemingly in a daze. Imperial physician Cui sighed secretly. Later, Shao Qingyuan is already married. No matter what the reason is, he has a wife. You're so outstanding. After returning to the capital, father will definitely choose a good husband for you. Cui Lan suddenly came back to her senses. She immediately stood up and said, I know, father. What good husband? She was just an inconspicuous imperial physician's daughter. She was also a medical woman who appeared in public all day long. The young masters of the aristocratic families in the capital looked down on her. She did not care for them either. Cui Lan shook hands and left the cabin in a hurry. Imperial physician Cui opened his mouth but hesitated. He only had one daughter. Her mother had passed away early and he was busy. When she was young, she had been bullied by servants, so she had developed the habit of being expressionless since she was young. Imperial physician Cui felt that he had mistreated her. In order to make up for it, he went along with her almost everything. However, Cui Lan had her own opinion since she was young and made her own decisions. For example, if she asked to study medicine, he would teach her. For example, when he was ordered to come to the Heading Prefecture this time, she also wanted to follow him to see the world, so he brought her here. But now, she seemed to have lost her heart to Shao Qingyuan. Imperial physician Cui did not know how to persuade her and could only remind her. He hoped that she could figure it out herself. In Imperial physician Cui's heart, his daughter was very outstanding. Perhaps she was unwilling to give up in such a short period of time, but she definitely would not do anything to destroy someone else's family. However, it was indeed a pity for Shao Qingyuan. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1321. I have news of by Muzi. Imperial physician Cui was optimistic, but he did not know that after Cui Lan left the cabin, her eyes became brighter and brighter. A certain thought also became more and more determined. The passenger ship sailed for another day and stopped in the nearby prefectural city for half a day. When it set off again, the sky had already darkened. Cui Lan watched with her own eyes as Shao Qingyuan and Shao Wen carried a basket of small fish to the bow of the ship. She took a deep breath and walked to Gu Yundong's cabin door. She raised her hand and knocked. Gu Yundong had just finished dinner and was reading a book while waiting for Shao Qingyuan to come back. She planned to fry some fish later as snacks, and she did not expect someone to knock on the door. She was stunned for a moment. After thinking for a while, she guessed who the person might be. She opened the door and saw Cui Lan, who had no expression on her face. Gu Yundong raised her eyebrows. "Dr. Cui, what's the matter? I want to talk to you alone." Gu Yundong turned sideways. "Shall we talk inside?" "No need. It's the same if we talk outside." Gu Yundong pondered for a moment and nodded. "All right, I'll get a cloak." She entered the room and came back with her cloak. She locked the cabin door and followed Cui Lan. It was actually a little cold now, especially since it was evening. The temperature had dropped sharply and they were on the river, so the wind was a little strong. Gu Yundong looked at Cui Lan walking in front of her and shrinking her neck. She could not help but laugh secretly. Cui Lan quickly led her to the corner of the deck. There were some wooden barrels and sacks piled there, so no one came except the crew. If they wanted to say something in private, it was appropriate here. Cui Lan stopped in her tracks and looked at the ripples at the bottom of the boat. She narrowed her eyes and turned to ask Gu Yundong, "I have a question for you, Mrs. Shao." "Ask away." "Is Mrs. Shao sincere about Shao Qingyuan?" This question was so stupid that Gu Yundong did not want to answer. "Of course I'm sincere." Cui Lan's lips curled up. "Is that so? If you're sincere, then you're willing to do anything for Shao Qingyuan, right?" Gu Yundong narrowed her eyes. What exactly is Dr. Cui trying to say? Mrs. Shao has always said that she has a deep love for her husband. Shao Qingyuan shouldn't have hidden anything from Mrs. Shao, right? Gu Yundong found it funny. Why did Cui Lan look like she knew Shao Qing better than his wife did? She and Shao Qingyuan had clearly not spoken much, but she had placed herself in a very subtle position. Gu Yundong smiled and nodded. "Yes, he doesn't hide anything from me." In that case, Mrs. Shao also knows that Shao Qingyuan is looking for a medicinal herb called Muzi? Gu Yundong suddenly looked up at her. Her gaze instantly became exceptionally sharp. Muzi? She did not expect to hear the name Muzi from Cui Lan's mouth. Of course, she knew that Brother Shao was looking for Muzi. Furthermore, this Muzi was for her mother. Cui Lan glanced at Gu Yundong and looked away. It seems that Mrs. Shao knows. Muzi is an extremely rare medicinal ingredient. Mostly, it is used for brain diseases and is very precious. Currently, only a few people in the entire Dejiang dynasty have this medicine. Even if someone has this medicine, there are too few people who know about it. It can be said to be priceless. As she spoke, Cui Lan looked at Gu Yundong. Shao Qingyuan really needed this medicine. When he came to the capital, I saw with my own eyes that after he found out about Muzi's whereabouts, he couldn't wait to personally confirm it. Because of this, he was almost killed on the spot as a thief. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1322. This herb is for me. Gu Yundong was shocked. She did not know about this. Shao Qingyuan had never mentioned it to her after he returned. This idiot had promised that he would not hide anything from her. He had also said that no matter what happened, his life should be the top priority. However, Cui Lan was not done speaking. There was a noble in the capital who looked down on Shao Qingyuan. When he found out that Shao Qingyuan was looking for Muzi, he specially released the news that he had this medicinal herb and could sell it to Shao Qingyuan at a high price. The condition was that Shao Qingyuan had to be his slave for a year. Shao Qingyuan agreed without hesitation. Although that noble later found it boring and did not continue to joke like this, it was true that Shao Qingyuan was willing to be someone's slave for Muzi. Gu Yundong's expression turned ugly. "Shao Qingyuan, you actually hid this from me?" Seeing her like this, Cui Lan's lips curled up slightly. However, she quickly calmed down. She looked at Gu Yundong. "It seems that Mrs. Shao doesn't know about these things. I thought that husband and wife would be honest with each other about everything." Gu Yundong suppressed the surging emotions in her heart and looked at Cui Lan coldly. Her patience was disappearing bit by bit. "From what you're saying, you seem to know about Muzi." Cui Lan nodded. "I do have news about Muzi, but whether I'm willing to tell you or not is my business. What can I do for you to reveal Muzi's whereabouts?" Cui Lan said, "You must leave Shao Qingyuan." Huh. Although Gu Yundong had guessed that this was probably the result, she did not expect her to say it so shamelessly. You know how badly Shao Qingyuan wants this herb? He's such a proud person, but he didn't hesitate to be a servant for this herb. It can be seen how important this herb is to him. It's so important that he's willing to pay any price. If you treat him sincerely, you should help him. As long as you leave him, he'll offer this herb with both hands. Gu Yundong was a little tired of this condition. Cui Lan said, he'll give you 2 days to consider. Actually, think about it carefully. Even if you don't leave Shao Qingyuan, as long as I say that I have news of by Muzi, I think he will agree to any of my requests, including leaving you. If that's the case, why did you come to me instead of looking for him? I just want you to be more dignified. You can naturally tell which is better for you, being abandoned or giving up. It would be strange if Gu Yundong believed her. Cui Lan liked Shao Qingyuan, but she wanted to leave a good impression on him, so she wanted to start with her. This was clearly an extremely disgusting act. Gu Yundong narrowed her eyes and looked at Cui Lan's condescending gaze, who felt that her existence was hindering Shao Qingyuan's future. She could not help but want to slap her. Mrs. Shao, think about it carefully. If there are any problems, you can come to me. Perhaps I can give you some ideas. After Cui Lan finished speaking, she wanted to turn around and return to the cabin. But just as she turned around, Gu Yundong's voice came from behind. Cui Lan. She did not call her Dr. Cui anymore. Then do you know why Shao Qingyuan is so desperate for this herb? Cui Lan turned around and saw Gu Yundong's mocking smile gradually deepen. She heard her say word by word, because this herb is for me. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1323. Pushing Gu Yundong into the water. Cui Lan suddenly raised her head and widened her eyes. She looked at Gu Yundong, who was laughing at her, in disbelief. She shook her head. Impossible. If you don't believe me, you can ask my husband. The disdain in Gu Yundong's eyes became even more obvious. Why don't you think about it? Why would Shao Qingyuan want that medicinal herb? You also said that he was alone. Who did he give that medicinal herb to? For himself? Or for his own medicinal herb shop? But have you ever seen a medicinal merchant willing to give his life for a medicinal herb? Cui Lan took a step back, her face pale. That's right, she didn't expect this. She actually didn't expect this. Gu Yundong laughed. Now, do you understand how much my husband values me? If I leave him, your medicine will be useless to him. Cui Lan's breathing quickened. She stared fixedly at Gu Yundong, as if she wanted to see any signs of lying on her face. But she did not. Gu Yundong's eyes were filled with contempt and confidence. She was not afraid of anyone asking Shao Qingyuan. She was not afraid of this threat at all. Cui Lan's fingers dug into her palms, almost causing her to bleed. She suddenly thought of something and said, in that case, you're the one who wants by Muzi. Alright, if you leave Shao Qingyuan, I'll give by Muzi to you. Was she trying everything she could in a moment of desperation? Gu Yundong shook her head in amusement. Do I look like such an idiot? You? Gu Yundong could not be bothered to talk to her. She turned around and was about to return to the cabin. Unexpectedly, just as she turned her head, she felt a gust of wind behind her. Gu Yundong turned her head abruptly and saw Cui Lan reaching out to push her with a ferocious expression. Gu Yundong narrowed her eyes and shifted her feet. She grabbed the wooden bucket beside her with one hand and Cui Lan with the other, throwing her out of the deck. Ah! Cui Lan screamed, her eyes filled with fear. The next moment, she realized that her entire body was suspended on the edge of the ship. The only thing that kept her from falling was Gu Yundong's hand. Cui Lan trembled in fear. She could only hold Gu Yundong's hand tightly and shout in a trembling voice, "Pull me up! Pull me up!" Gu Yundong lay on the deck, her right foot hooked onto the hemp rope not far away. Her expression was leisurely and she was not in a hurry at all. Pull you up? Gu Yundong sneered. You want to push me into the water, you want to kill me, and now you expect me to pull you up? Do you think I'm a good person who repays evil with kindness? I didn't do it on purpose. I just slipped. I didn't want to harm you. Cui Lan hurriedly denied. She had been impulsive just now. It was really uncomfortable to be hanging like this. Cui Lan's voice was intermittently blown by the wind. I'm a doctor. I've always helped the world and never thought of harming anyone. Really, I'm just threatening you. I don't want to kill anyone. I don't believe you. You. Cui Lan's body swayed. Gu Yundong, if you let go, you'll be killing someone. You have to pay with your life for killing someone. Moreover, my father is an imperial physician and he's an official of the imperial court. If you harm me, your entire family will be implicated by you. Your husband won't want you either. It want you any good. Gu Yundong sighed. This girl was still threatening her even at this point. She really wouldn't shed a tear until she saw the coffin. Look at how nervous you are. I didn't say I would kill you. She smiled, but the malice in her eyes was obvious. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1324. You're so scheming, however, as long as I let go gently, you will fall into the river. Don't worry, you won't die for the time being after falling. I will immediately ask the crew to jump down and save you. Gu Yundong spoke slowly and meaningfully. What else did Chuilan not understand? Yes, as long as she did not drown, Gu Yundong would not kill anyone. When she was rescued by the rough crew, she would be drenched in public and her innocence would be lost. She would suffer from rumors. If she could not marry into a good family, even her father would be implicated by her. He would be pointed at and his future would be affected. Chuilan's expression changed. She looked up at Gu Yundong in disbelief. You're so sinister. Thank you for your compliment. Gu Yundong accepted her praise with a smile. Chuilan took a deep breath and suddenly shouted, "Help, someone is killing." Before she could finish speaking, she felt Gu Yundong loosen her grip. Chuilan immediately screamed, "Ah, what are you doing? Continue shouting. See if it's faster for you to call for help or if it's faster for me to throw you down." Chuilan instantly shut her mouth and did not dare to make a sound. She regretted choosing this position. No one came here and there were buckets and sacks blocking the way. Besides, the sky was dark now. Coupled with the sound of water, no one could hear them. Chuilan felt like she couldn't hold on any longer. Her hands felt like they were about to break. She was extremely afraid. She looked up at Gu Yundong, who still looked calm and hated her. "What are you trying to do?" Gu Yundong smiled. It was finally time to start negotiating. "I don't know what I want to do either. After all, you were the one who pushed me first. I only did this because of my quick wit. I wasn't prepared to ask you to compensate me in advance. Of course, you can also think about what bargaining chips you have to convince me to pull you up." Wasn't the hint obvious enough? As expected, Chuilan's expression changed slightly. "I don't have much leverage." Gu Yundong smiled. This girl was still being stubborn at this juncture. "All right," Gu Yundong pried her fingers off her wrist one by one. Chuilan was shocked and hurriedly shouted, "By Muzi, I have news for you about By Muzi." Gu Yundong stopped. That was more obedient. She looked like she was weighing whether this bargaining chip was big enough. "All right, since you want to tell me so badly, I'll listen. If I'm satisfied, I'll pull you up." "What if you go back on your word?" Gu Yundong raised her eyebrows. "But you only have one choice now." Chuilan took a deep breath and her expression became even uglier. Yes, she had no other choice now. She would take a gamble or be thrown down. "Okay, I'll tell you. You'd better tell me the truth." Gu Yundong smiled. "If I hear anything amiss, I'll throw you down." "You," Chuilan pursed her lips and gritted her teeth. "By Muzi is in the capital." Gu Yundong loosened her grip and Chuilan said anxiously, "I'm not lying. This is very strange. If you knew that By Muzi was in the capital, you should have told Shao Qingyuan long ago. Why didn't you tell him back then? He wasn't married at that time. It should have been easier for you to succeed at that time, right?" Chuilan hurriedly said, "I didn't know long ago. I was only informed when I arrived at the heading prefecture. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 1325. You're simply trash. Continue. Gu Yundong raised her eyebrows. Yes, if she only found out when she reached the heading prefecture, she would indeed not have the chance to tell Shao Qingyuan. Chuilan was dizzy from the wind and Gu Yundong's scare. She could not think of a perfect lie, so she told the truth. "I saved the life of the grandson of a rich family in the heading prefecture. That rich family was very grateful to me and my father. Later on, I accidentally heard him mentioned By Muzi. I thought about how Shao Qingyuan had put in a lot of effort to search for this medicinal herb. That rich family saw that I urgently needed this medicinal herb. In order to repay me for saving his life, the master of the family said that his son in the capital had one. He could write a letter to his son and tell him what had happened. His son would definitely give By Muzi to me." "Which family in the capital?" Chuilan paused for a moment and said, "The Yen family, a tea merchant family in the capital." "Tea merchants. What about the letter?" "I don't have it," Cui Lan replied. Old Master Yin directly wrote it and sent it to the capital. The Yin family also knows my father's identity. After we return to the capital, the Yin family will naturally send by Muzi to our residence. Speaking of this, Cui Lan finally had a hint of smugness on her face. Look, so what if you know about these things? You still can't get by Muzi. You already know. Can you pull me up now? Gu Yundong raised her eyebrows and suddenly raised her voice. I'm done asking. Cui Lan was stunned. In the next moment, 2 footsteps came from the deck. When one of them walked up to her, she finally saw who it was. Shao Qingyuan? A look of surprise flashed across Cui Lan's face. Shao Qingyuan, you saw it? Your wife wants to kill me. She's vicious. You should see her true colors. Hurry up and pull me up. Shao Qingyuan glanced sideways at Cui Lan and did not say a word to her. He only said to Gu Yundong, when I returned to the cabin, I realized that the door was locked, so I came here to look for you. I happened to see Imperial Physician Cui's guard coming over, so I stopped him. Since you're done asking, let's go back. Your hand should hurt after holding her for so long. They'll rub it for you. When Cui Lan heard this, her face was filled with disbelief. Not only did Shao Qingyuan hear it from the beginning, but he even stopped the guard who was protecting her and her father and daughter from saving her? Cui Lan felt cold all over. This shouldn't happen. Shao Qingyuan shouldn't be like this. He clearly had a chivalrous heart. He should be clearly distinguishing between right and wrong. How did this happen? Gu Yundong glanced at her and let go. Just as Cui Lan thought she was going to fall, a rope suddenly flew over and instantly wrapped around her waist. With a little force, it pulled her onto the deck. Cui Lan was still in shock. She knelt on the ground and panted heavily. After a long time, she looked up and only saw Shao Qingyuan supporting Gu Yundong's back as he left. Cui Lan's eyes were bloodshot and filled with hatred. The guard beside her lowered his eyes slightly and said in a low voice, Miss Cui, you should return to the cabin. Cui Lan suddenly turned her head and glared at him angrily. Where were you? The Emperor asked you to protect us. Is this how you protect us? Shao Qingyuan stopped you just like that. You're simply useless. The guard narrowed his eyes and said coldly, I'm under orders to protect Imperial Physician Cui, not you. With that, he turned around and left. He was an Imperial Guard and was only temporarily acting as Imperial Physician Cui's guard. It was not Cui Lan's turn to point and scold him. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1326. Arriving in the capital, Cui Lan was dumbfounded. She sat on the deck in a daze and could not recover for a long time. It was not until a gust of wind blew that she shuddered violently. She staggered to her feet and stumbled back to her cabin. After Gu Yundong and Shao Qingyuan returned to the house, she narrowed her eyes and settled the score with him. Why didn't you tell me about what happened in the capital? What about almost losing his life for by Muzi? What about being threatened to be someone's slave for a year? What if it did happen? What then? Shao Qingyuan hugged her and shook her gently. It's all in the past. I'm not angry anymore. Not in the past. Gu Yundong was very angry. You always say that I deal with danger alone. What about you? I promise there won't be a next time. Shao Qingyuan immediately admitted his mistake. I swear that if I take the risk alone next time I will. Shut up. Shao Qingyuan obediently remained silent. He looked down and saw that she was still angry. He lowered his head and kissed her. I'll definitely tell you everything in the future. Gu Yundong glared at him fiercely before slowly calming down. But when she thought of Cui Lan's words, Gu Yundong fell silent again. After a long while she asked, what do you think about by Muzi? If Cui Lan is right, the Yin family will give the herbs to the Cui family. We can only start from the Cui family. The problem was that after this incident, the Cui family had already fallen out with them. Ordinary transactions were impossible, so they could only think of another way. The two of them looked at each other and temporarily put this matter aside. Unexpectedly, the next day, Gu Yundong heard that Cui Lan was sick. It was probably because of the cold wind last night that she caught a cold. Imperial Physician Cui had never come to look for them either. It was unknown if Cui Lan did not tell him the reason or if the guard had told him the truth. In short, Cui Lan's illness made Gu Yundong's life on the ship more stable. After 5 to 6 days, Cui Lan finally became more energetic, but she did not step out of the cabin door again. Gu Yundong was happy and at ease. Tong Shuitao seemed to have adapted to life on the ship. Her expression gradually improved and she could go out to do things. When she heard about the matter between Gu Yundong and Cui Lan, she was especially angry and regretful. She could not stand beside Miss and help her kick that B***th into the river. After another 10 days, the passenger ship finally arrived at the port. Puman Port was a port 50 miles away from the capital. From here, one had to take a carriage for half a day to enter the city. When the passenger ship stopped, it was not long after dawn. Shao was the first to get off the ship and hire a carriage. He moved the things in the cabin to the carriage first. In any case, they did not have many things left after using up a lot of stuff during the trip. Gu Yundong kept everything that could be hidden in her space. When they got off the ship, they happened to see Imperial Physician Cui coming out of the cabin with Cui Lan. When she saw Gu Yundong and Shao Qingyuan, Cui Lan's expression turned ferocious. She quickly turned around and followed Imperial Physician Cui down the deck. Looks like Cui Lan doesn't have any improper thoughts about you. It's just that she seems to hate you because of love. It's better to hate me. Gu Yundong could not help but laugh and followed him down the deck. After getting on the carriage, the group headed straight for the capital. It was not until evening that they entered the city gate. It was already a little late, so the few of them found an inn to rest. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible. In the afternoon, he found the owner of the house to sign the deed with them and registered with the government. This house was hers. After coming out with the warm deed, Gu Yundong looked up at the plaque above her head and said to Shao Qingyuan, "I have to change this plaque to Shao residence later. That will be much more pleasing to the eye. Well, find someone to replace it tomorrow." Shao Qingyuan looked at her and the two of them laughed. "We still have to get someone to clean the house tomorrow. We also have to buy some things. When the time comes, we can move in directly. The greatest benefit is that this place is quite close to the shop Nie Shuang bought. When the house is ready, we'll go to the shop to take a look." The two of them chatted as they returned to the inn. It was already very late. Shao Wen and Tong Shuitao were already waiting for them. After entering the room, the four of them ate something first before Shao Wen began to talk about the situation of the Yen family. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1328. Second Master Yen. The Yen family is indeed in Heading Prefecture. Master Yen, who is in the capital now, is the second son of the Yen family. He's 35 years old and is in charge of the business in the capital. Shao Wen told him everything he had found out. This Master Yen was called Yen Yihai and had been in the capital for many years. The grandson of the Yen family that Cui Lan had saved was the son of the eldest master of the Yen family, the nephew of Yen Yihai. When Gu Yundong heard this, she could not help but knock on the table. This is interesting. First Master Yan's son has been saved, but he wants second Master Yen to pay. Will he agree? How's the relationship between the two branches of the Yen family? Shao Wen chuckled. Madam is right. On the surface, the two brothers of the Yen family are indeed loving brothers. However, I specially asked around and found that this second Master Yen hasn't returned to Heading Prefecture for 2 years. However, his wife and children have gone back to visit the old man. Gu Yundong looked at Shao Qingyuan. Do you think Yen Yihai will willingly give by Muzi to the Cui family? Mostly not. So, we still have to start with the Yen family? Shao Qingyuan nodded. However, since old Master Yen wrote a letter to Yen Yihai, even if it's for show, Yen Yihai won't openly disobey his father's orders. We still have to find out what he wants to do. Gu Yundong nodded. In fact, she felt that the possibility of getting by Muzi from the Yen family was higher than getting it from the Cui family. After all, Cui Lan had a grudge against them. After talking about Yen Yihai, Gu Yundong looked at Tong Shuitao. Where's Qin Wenzheng? Lord Qin isn't in the capital. She had gone out today to find out about Qin Wenzheng and Imperial Physician Song. Not in the capital? Tong Shuitao nodded. I heard that Mr. Qin went out to the capital to do something. I don't know when he'll be back. Mrs. Qin and Miss Qin are at home, but I heard that Miss Qin has been sick recently, so the Qin residence closed its doors and refused guests. Since that was the case, Gu Yundong would not disturb them. Imperial Physician Song has been in the palace for the past 2 days. I don't know the exact situation. She couldn't find out what was going on in the palace. Gu Yundong nodded to show that she understood. In any case, she had many things to do. It would not be too late to look for them after everything settled down. When Shao Wen and Tong Shuetao heard that they had already bought a house, they looked very excited. The next day they happily ran to clean the house. However, the house was a 3-courtyard house. It was still a little big. Just the two of them were still too few. Gu Yundong inquired around the house and found 3 women to help tidy it up. She and Shao Qingyuan walked around the streets, planning to buy some things. This was Gu Yundong's first time in the capital. The streets in the capital were wider and more prosperous than in the Xuanhe prefecture. The main road in front of him could accommodate 4 carriages riding side by side. Gu Yundong looked at the shops along the street and walked over. They needed to buy a lot of things and had little time, so they did not have much chance to shop. They basically went straight to their destination. Beds, tables, chairs and other furniture were needed. There were also pots, pans, rice, oil and salt that were needed in the kitchen. There were also quilts, pillowcases, brain threads and so on. They could slowly add the others that they did need for the time being. Gu Yundong bought everything she could and sent them to her house in Hutai Alley. Then she went back with Shao Qingyuan. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1329. Reminder. Unexpectedly, just as the two of them were about to reach the entrance of the alley, they suddenly bumped into a familiar person. That person was also stunned for a moment when he saw them. Then he walked over. Dr. Shao. Shao Qingyuan nodded at him, greeted him and brushed past him, planning to leave. That person was about to leave, but he suddenly stopped and said, Imperial Physician Cui entered the palace to meet the Emperor as soon as he returned. This person was the Imperial Guard who had protected Imperial Physician Cui and his daughter on the ship. Now that Imperial Physician Cui had returned to the capital safely, his mission was completed. This person left after saying this. Gu Yundong waited until his figure had completely disappeared before she asked, Are all the people in the capital so oblique? Couldn't he make it clearer? He clearly meant well, but if he met someone who wasn't quick-witted enough, they really wouldn't be able to figure it out. Shao Qingyuan led her into the alley. I don't have a relationship with him after all. We've only met once. It's already not bad that he reminded me of this. He told them that Imperial Physician Cui had gone to see the Emperor as soon as he returned to the capital. It was to report the vaccination in the Heading Prefecture. This was his duty as a subject. Although Shao Qingyuan did not have the status of an official imperial physician in the imperial hospital, he was in charge of the vaccination in the Xuanhe Prefecture. He was shouldering the mission given by the Emperor. When he returned to the capital, he should have entered the palace to meet the Emperor immediately. Unexpectedly, he stayed outside for 2 days without doing anything. Imperial Physician Cui and Shao Qingyuan came back on the same boat. The Emperor must have known that he had been in the capital for 2 days. If he delayed any longer, no matter how good the Emperor's temper was, even if he knew that he did not know the rules of the imperial court and did not mind, others would be dissatisfied and report Shao Qingyuan. Are you going to the palace tomorrow? Gu Yundong asked. Shao Qingyuan nodded. I do plan to enter the palace tomorrow. With his status, it was not enough for him to meet the Emperor directly. He had to report to the head of the imperial hospital, Song Dejiang, before Song Dejiang brought him there. They'll leave the house to you. They'll be back soon. Yeah. The two of them walked to the entrance as they spoke. Some of the things they had bought had already been transported over. Shao Wen and Tong Shuetao were helping with the transportation. When they saw Gu Yundong and Gu Yundong, Tong Shuetao immediately ran over. Miss, the room has been tidied up and the bed and cabinet have arrived. Come in and take a look. Gu Yundong followed her in and was the first to see some old furniture and miscellaneous items piled up in the courtyard. There were some things here that were going to be sold and some were going to be thrown away. Unexpectedly, a woman who was helping to clean the house suddenly came forward. She went to Gu Yundong's side and asked with a smile, Madam Shao, you're back? Aunt, what's the matter? It's like this. Look at your bed, cabinet and so on. You don't want the old ones anyway. Can I take them back? Gu Yundong was stunned, but Tong Shuetao frowned and said, I've already told you that those big items are for sale. Sai, look at what you're saying. Those things are all damaged. Otherwise, how could the previous owner bear to leave them behind? You just came to the capital and don't know the market in the capital. These things are not worth much money. As soon as the woman finished speaking, another woman behind her pulled her back. All right, stop talking. These things are worth. Before she could finish speaking, she was pushed by the woman from before. Shut up. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1330. Let Gu Yundong do something good. Then the woman continued to look at Gu Yundong. She smiled and said respectfully, Madam Shao, you look like you are from a rich family. You don't care about this small sum of money. Why don't you do a good deed? Gu Yundong found it funny and raised her eyebrows slightly. Yesterday, after buying the house, I agreed to sell the bed and cabinet to the broker. Later he will find a cart to take them away. So I can't give them to you. If you want them, you can have those things. She pointed to another pile of things to throw away. Actually, there were quite a few good things in that pile. For example, the damaged stools and chairs, as well as the cages and cabinets that had been bitten by rats. These were all ordinary wood things that could not be sold for much money. It was better to chop them up and burn them as firewood. However, if others took a fancy to it, they could naturally pull them away. Gu Yundong had some money now, so she would not mistreat herself if she could use good stuff. If she was still as poor as before, she would definitely move everything back home like a mouse. Unexpectedly, the auntie from before said with a look of disdain, These are all broken. They can't be used at all. Why should I bring them back? Gu Yundong smiled. Then forget it. She raised her voice and called Tong Shuetao over. I think the work is almost done. Let's settle the salary for the ants. The woman wanted to say something, but when she saw Shao Qingyuan, who seemed tall and cold, enter, she immediately stopped talking. However, she still looked at those things unwillingly and muttered something. Tong Shuetao quickly gave her money and sent her away. On the other hand, the woman who had stopped her earlier was at the back. After thinking about it, she hurriedly ran back and asked Gu Yundong in a low voice, Madam Shao, do you really not want those over there? Gu Yundong saw that she was a little embarrassed and then looked at her clothes, which were indeed a little more dilapidated than the other women's. She knew that her family was not very well off, so she nodded. I don't want them. If Aunt likes them, you can bring them back to repair them for the children to play with. The woman was even more embarrassed, but she still thanked Gu Yundong repeatedly. Then I'll take them back. Yes, I'll get Shuetao to help you move them. She's strong. The woman wanted to refuse, but Tong Shuetao had already run over quickly and pulled the woman to see something. When the woman was done, Gu Yundong had basically cleaned up everything and got rid of the things she could throw and burn. Later on, the broker found a few people to transport the large items away. Those things were not worth much, only 5 taels of silver in total. Gu Yundong took the money to the market next door to buy some chicken, duck, and fish. At night, they cooked a sumptuous dinner. Although there were only 4 of them, they still had to celebrate the housewarming. Gu Yundong was still not used to sleeping in her new home. She only fell asleep after a long time at night. The next day she woke up late. When she got up, Shao Qingyuan was already not at home. He had left with Shaowen. Gu Yundong slowly got up and washed up before bringing Tong Shuetao out. They planned to go to the shop Nie Shuang bought today to take a look. Holding the address Nie Shuang had given her, Gu Yundong strolled towards the shop. However, halfway through, a carriage suddenly passed by her. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1331. Shuilan goes to the Yen residence. Gu Yundong turned her head slightly and saw the person sitting in the carriage. Was this fate? Tong Shuetao also saw it and asked softly, Miss, that was Miss Chui just now, right? Yes. Gu Yundong nodded. She looked in the direction where the carriage had disappeared and asked, Where is it going? Tong Shuetao thought for a moment and suddenly widened her eyes. She pointed in that direction and said, It's the Yen residence, Mississippi. Yen residence? Gu Yundong thought of her and Shao Qingyuan's guess. According to Chui Lan, the Yen residence would send by Muzi directly to the Chui residence. However, Chui Lan had personally gone to the Yen residence. Could it be that as they had guessed, Second Master Yen did not want to give by Muzi to them, so he did not send him over? After all, Imperial Physician Chui and the others had been back for 2 days. Gu Yundong immediately became excited and hurriedly said to Tong Shuetao, Let's go to the Yen residence to take a look. Miss, we can't enter. Who said we're going in? Let's find a place nearby to sit and see if Chui Lan can get by Muzi. Tong Shuetao nodded repeatedly and immediately led Gu Yundong to the Yen residence. The Yen residence was located in a rather prosperous area in the capital. The Yen family was in the tea business and was a big family, so the house was built big and rich. Sure enough, Gu Yundong found a tea shop nearby. The shop was diagonally opposite the entrance of the Yen residence. She ordered 2 pots of tea and waited with Tong Shui Tao while listening to gossip. Needless to say, there was a lot of gossip outside the Yen residence that was about the Yen family. Master Yan's youngest daughter rarely comes back after she gets married, right? She's just a concubine's daughter. Her life in the Yen family was difficult. Now that she's finally married to a good husband and is living a good life, why would she come back? I don't think so. Think about how this concubine's daughter married her husband back then. I heard that she didn't have a good life in her in-laws' family. Yes. I think I heard that the main wife's daughter of the Yen family took a fancy to her husband and was intercepted by this concubine's daughter. Therefore, this concubine's daughter was raised to be petty and ruthless. She specially did such shameless things. No way. That concubine's daughter of the Yen family is very timid. How dare she intercept her legitimate sister? The rumors were getting more and more unreliable. Someone asked the boss of the tea shop what happened. After all, he had opened a shop in front of the Yen family for a long time. The boss did not seem to intend to answer at first. He did not want to offend the Yen family. However, when he heard that the rumors were getting more and more ridiculous for some reason, he still said, "Second Miss Yen is pitiful enough. Don't ruin her reputation anymore. Have some respect." Gu Yundong could tell that this concubine's daughter had a hard time in the Yen family. As for how she married her current husband, there might be an inside story. Just as he was thinking, another carriage suddenly stopped outside the Yen residence. Someone alighted from the carriage and was helped into the side door by a maidservant. The tea shop immediately became lively. Isn't that the second daughter of the Yen family? Yes. It's the second daughter of the Yen family. Didn't everybody say that she hadn't returned to her mother's house for a long time? Why is she back today? Her mother is still in the Yen family. How can she never come back? I don't see her husband. Gu Yundong was sitting far away, so she could only see the side of the woman's face, which was delicate and pleasant looking, but she looked a little weak. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1332. Something happened to the Yen residents. The customers in the shop began to discuss again. However, perhaps because of what the shop owner had said just now, the discussion about second Miss Yen slowly stopped and they began to talk about other things in the Yen family. Gu Yundong pricked up her ears and listened. She accepted some information, and was also speechless when she heard about the privacy of some servants. However, it was said that Yen Yihai's wife was shrewish and a little greedy. As for Yen Yihai, one of them often played the good cop and the other played the bad cop. In the end, Yen Yihai's reputation as a smooth, capable and easy-to-talk-to businessman was created. Gu Yundong smiled and shook her head. There were so many things to do in this rich family, and they seemed a little complicated. She listened with interest, but the door of the Yen residence had not been opened since second Miss Yen entered. It was not until noon that the side door suddenly opened and a servant from the Yen residence rushed out. Gu Yundong narrowed her eyes and watched the servant run away in a panic. After an unknown period of time, the servant returned anxiously with another person. When Gu Yundong saw that person, she suddenly stood up and craned her neck to look over. Imperial Physician Chui? That servant actually called Imperial Physician Chui over. Not only that, but that servant was also carrying Imperial Physician Cui's medicine box on his shoulder. Something happened to the Yen residence? Gu Yundong scratched her ears and cheeks. She wanted to know what was going on inside, but she could not get in. What a headache. Not only her, but other guests also saw this scene and could not help but ask curiously, what happened to the Yen family? That's Imperial Physician Chui, right? Someone stood up. He'll ask around. Gu Yundong looked at that person with a burning gaze and that person quickly left. Gu Yundong was still sitting there waiting for them to come back. Unfortunately, it was as if this person was gone. After a long time he did not appear. 2 hours later, the door of the Yen residence opened again and 2 people came out. Gu Yundong took a closer look. Wasn't this Imperial Physician Chui and Chui Lan? They were sent out by the butler of the Yen residence. The butler's expression was very strange. Although he seemed respectful, there was a hint of anger. However, in the face of Imperial Physician Chui, he still looked considerate and cupped his hands to bid them farewell. Both father and daughter did not look too good. Chui Lan's eyes were red. She gritted her teeth and was called by Imperial Physician Cui twice before getting into the carriage. Gu Yundong tapped her fingers on the table and watched as their carriage went further and further away. Only then did the butler of the Yen residence snort coldly. With a flick of his sleeve, he strode back to the residence. This scene confused everyone. At this moment, the customer who had said that he was going to investigate returned with an excited smile on his face. As soon as he sat down, someone asked him, "How was it? What happened to the Yen residence? Why were you gone for so long?" That person held the tea bowl and drank a big bowl of water. Then he wiped his mouth and said, "Sai, do you think it's so easy to find out about the Yen residence? I have to find my brother first. My brother looks for his brother. His brother still has to find his lover, who looks for her sister who has a lover, and then, all right. Hurry up and tell us what happened." Someone interrupted him and urged him impatiently. Only then was that person satisfied. He chuckled and said, "You will never imagine how bold that girl from Imperial Physician Xia's family is. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 1333, This move is wonderful. How serious? That person said mysteriously. Miss Cui sent an invitation to the Yen residence to visit the eldest daughter of the Yen residence. Not far away, the tea shop owner was also listening attentively, but when he heard this he felt a little strange. When did this Miss Cui become so close to Miss Yen? He had opened a tea shop here for so many years, but he had never heard of Miss Yen and Miss Cui having a relationship. Only Gu Yundong and the others knew about these problems. She said that she was visiting Miss Yen, but wasn't she actually going for by Muzi? The gossiper continued, "Isn't it a coincidence today? Didn't second Miss Yen also return to her maiden home just now? She heard that Miss Cui was here. Shouldn't they meet and talk? Who knew that Miss Cui would suddenly go crazy for some reason? She suddenly smashed second Miss Yen's head when no one was around and knocked second Miss Yen unconscious." What? Everyone was stunned when they heard that. Someone quickly asked, "Could it be that Miss Cui couldn't stand second Miss Yen snatching her sister's husband to avenge Miss Yen? Didn't they say that they were friends?" "That I don't know." That person took another sip of tea before continuing. "However, after second Miss Yen was knocked unconscious, the Yen family immediately went to find Imperial Physician Cui to save her. Is second Miss Yen all right? How is she fine? Even Imperial Physician Cui said that it's especially serious. So what should we do?" What could he do? Of course he had to save her. "However, I heard that second Miss Yan's injury can only be treated with a very precious medicine. What's it called? Baimu? I don't remember very clearly. Anyway, I heard that Master Yen gave this medicine to second Miss Yen." His heart ached. What else did Gu Yundong not understand? She looked at Tong Shuetao, whose eyes were wide open. Then she threw down the silver and left with her. Miss is what the Yen family did what I think it is? What do you think?" Gu Yundong smiled. She knew it. How could second Master Yen bear to use good medicinal herbs to pay a nephew who was not close to him? This was a brilliant move. He would wait for Cui Lan to come to his door and call his concubine's daughter, who was not doted on much, home. He would let Cui Lan personally smash her head and find Imperial Physician Cui to diagnose her. Imperial Physician Cui said that Baimuzi had to be used to save her, and the Yen family happened to have such a Baimuzi that they wanted to give to the Cui family. Imperial Physician Cui had no other choice. It was Cui Lan who smashed the person. Could it be that he wanted his daughter to become a murderer? Therefore Cui Lan could not take Baimuzi away. She could only give it to the second daughter of the Yen family. However, Baimuzi would definitely not be used. Otherwise, why would Yihai spend so much effort? As for how the Yen family operated, how to get Cui Lan to do it, how to ensure that second Miss Yen had to use Baimuzi to save her life, and how to deceive Imperial Physician Cui, only the Yen family knew. Among them, the most innocent person was probably that second Miss Yen. She had not been back to her parents' house for a long time. She did not expect such a big show to be waiting for her the moment she returned. Gu Yundong sighed secretly and walked home. It was already so late, so she could only go to the shop tomorrow. From the looks of it, she indeed had to think of ways to get this Baimuzi from the Yen family. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1334. Who said that the shop was rented? Gu Yundong and Tong Shuitao did not know that not long after they left, another horse came to the entrance of the Yen residence. A man got off the horse and threw the reins to the servant guarding the door. Then he rushed into the residence to see second Miss Yen. Shao Qingyuan had yet to return when Gu Yundong and his wife returned home. It was not until half an hour later that Shao Wen hurriedly entered the house. "Where's brother Shao?" Gu Yundong asked curiously. Shao Wen said, "Young master can't come back tonight. He was pulled by Imperial physician Song to talk at the Imperial Hospital. It seems like he can't leave. So, he asked me to come back and tell Madam not to wait." Gu Yundong pursed his lips. Could Song Dejiang understand the ways of the world? Wouldn't he feel guilty for dragging someone else's husband to spend the night? Even so, Gu Yundong still tidied herself up and went to bed early. She wanted to discuss the Yen family with Shao Qingyuan when he returned. There was also the matter of brother Shao looking for his parents. The last information he received from Tao Yen was about the home mansion. However, such insider information about noble families was not something that Gu Yundong could find out by sending Tong Shuitao to inquire. Therefore she wanted to ask Song Dejiang or Qin Wenzheng for help. Now she had to open the shop first. Thus, early the next morning, Gu Yundong still brought Tong Shuitao to the shop. The shop Nie Shuang bought was not far from Hutai Alley. It was in a relatively prosperous area and was said to be very big. Gu Yundong followed the address and was very satisfied with the streets she passed. Not bad. This area did not look cheap. The families living nearby were all rich. It was obvious that they had money and time. It was indeed a suitable place to open a milk tea shop. As Gu Yundong thought, she stopped in front of a two-story shop. "Miss, this is it." Tong Shuitao also looked at the shop in front of her with bright eyes. The capital was indeed the capital. Even the shop was bigger than the Xuanhe prefectures. They were both 2 stories, but the shop in front of them looked a little taller and much more imposing. "Let's go and take a look." The two of them walked forward. Unexpectedly, after taking a few steps, they frowned at the same time. How did the door open? Tong Shuitao asked curiously and stepped out to take a closer look. The 2 doors that opened were indeed from this shop. Gu Yundong thought of what Nie Shuang had said. Maybe the shopkeeper came to clean. She remembered that Nie Shuang had said that she had left a key to this shop for Nie Tsong, who was still in the capital. She had asked Nie Tsong to get someone to help clean the shop from time to time, lest too much dust accumulated and the shop became dilapidated. Tong Shuitao nodded. The 2 of them continued forward and walked in through the 2 open doors. However, just as she reached the door, she heard a high-pitched voice coming from inside. "How is it? Isn't this shop good? Not only is this place spacious, but there's also a second floor and a courtyard at the back. Most importantly, the location is good. Most of the people coming and going are rich. If you rent this shop and do any business, you definitely won't lose out." His voice was a little rough, but the meaning behind his words made Gu Yundong frown. "Rent? You want to rent this shop? Who said you could rent it and who agreed? Miss, what's going on? Why do I feel that something is wrong?" Gu Yundong pursed her lips and took out the note Nie Shuang had written for her. "If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 1335. Do you have the deeds? 68 Jinlan Street, not a word wrong. Gu Yundong kept the note and strode in with Tong Shuitao. As soon as she entered, she saw a woman in her 40s talking. "You have to consider it carefully. My shop is very popular. Many people come to see it. It's now or never." As she spoke, she happened to see Gu Yundong and Tong Shuitao enter. Her eyes immediately lit up and she hurriedly walked over to ask, "You're also here to look at the shop, right? Come, let me introduce you." Gu Yundong narrowed her eyes and sized her up for a while. She had thought that she was a broker, but now, the woman looked like a servant from a rich family. Could it be Nie Tsong's idea? He wanted to rent out this shop? She ignored the old woman and looked at the other 2 people standing in the shop. The man and woman seemed to be husband and wife. Their eyes were shining as they looked at the shop, but they looked a little hesitant. They were trying their best to consider. However, when they saw Gu Yundong and Tong Shuitao, their conflicted expressions changed. They immediately came over and pulled the old woman over. "Mother Qin, we took a liking to this shop first. How can you rent it to someone else?" Mother Qin immediately smiled happily. "I already said that many people came to look at my shop. Then did you take a fancy to this shop? Alright, let's sign the lease now. Give me half a year's rent and deposit. At the mention of silver, the couple hesitated again and said softly, but the rent is too expensive. It's 30 taels a month and we have to pay for half a year. A trace of annoyance and disdain flashed across Mother Chen's eyes, but she still smiled. You can't say that. If you do business on this street, it's not difficult to earn more than 100 taels a month. These dozens of taels of silver are nothing to you. You'll get back your capital very quickly. Seeing that they were still hesitating, Mother Chen immediately looked at Gu Yundong. Madam, what do you think of this shop? You definitely won't lose out if you rent it. Gu Yundong glanced at her and asked, Does this shop belong to your family? Mother Chen was stunned. Her eyes were evasive for a moment, but she quickly calmed down. Isn't that obvious? If it's not my master's, would I take it out to rent? Do you have a deed? Mother Chen frowned and became impatient. What's wrong with you? You didn't say that you wanted to rent it. Why are you asking me for the deed? I naturally have the deed. Otherwise, why do I have the key to this shop? I can't just show you this, right? Mother Chen felt that Gu Yundong was here to cause trouble. She waved her hand and started to chase him away. All right. You have quite a lot of questions. Let me tell you, my shop is very popular. If you don't want to rent it, leave quickly. Don't hinder others here. Gu Yundong avoided Mother Chen's hand and said to the couple, I advise you to see if she has a house deed first. Otherwise, it will be troublesome if the money is wasted. The couple looked at each other. Although they felt that what Gu Yundong said made sense, they were afraid that she also wanted to rent this shop, so she deliberately sowed discord between them and Mother Chen. Hence, they said hesitantly, We don't think so. Mother Chen is someone close to Lady Yen of the Yen residence. The Yen residence is so big. She wouldn't lie to us about dozens of taels of silver, right? If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1336. Find Yet Song Yen residence? Gu Yundong frowned. Was it the Yen residence that she knew? Master Yen Yihai's residence? Gu Yundong asked for confirmation. Mrs. Chen immediately puffed out her chest and raised her eyebrows. That's right. And Mrs. Yan's maid. Our Yen residence is so big. Would we swallow your money? Gu Yundong narrowed her eyes and felt that something was amiss. She looked at Mother Chen and then at the couple. In the end, she said, It's such a big sum of money. It's best to consider it carefully. If you don't see the deed clearly, you'll regret it in the future. With that, she turned around and left with Tong Shuetao. Mrs. Chen was so angry at Gu Yundong's last sentence that she fell backward. She chased after her for a few steps and pointed at her back with a trembling finger as she scolded, Where did you come from to find trouble? Little b****, don't leave if you have the ability. Don't let me see you next time or I'll teach you a lesson. After cursing for a while, Mother Chen spat fiercely and turned to look at the couple again. Don't listen to her. She just can't bear to see our shop rented out. She must have been sent by our Yen family to sow discord. Come, let's talk about the lease first. However, just as Mother Chen finished speaking, the couple looked at each other and said with a dry smile, Mother Chen, look, your rent is indeed a little expensive. We don't have that much money on hand. How about this? We'll go back and raise the money first and come back another day? They thought about it just now and felt that the girl was right. Mother Chen only had the key. Whenever at the mention of the deed, she changed the topic. Something was wrong. Even if she had the reputation of the Yen residence, it was because the Yen residence was too big. If they suffered a loss and went to the Yen residence, they might be chased out as blackmailers. They would not be able to complain at all. Therefore, they should consider it again. When Mother Chen heard their words, her expression suddenly turned exceptionally ugly. You don't have the money? That's fine. Why don't you pay a month's deposit first? When you gather the rest, you can pay. As soon as she said this, the couple became even more uneasy. They could only smile and say, That's not appropriate. Well, gather the money first. We'll go now. Well, leave first. Then, the two of them immediately walked out of the shop in a hurry and left without looking back. Gu Yundong and Tong Shuetao stood at the entrance of the alley. When they saw the couple come out and Mother Chen spat in the direction of the door, they knew that this deal had not been closed and heaved a sigh of relief. Miss, what should we do now? Gu Yundong pursed his lips. Go find Nye Tsong first. Initially, Gu Yundong did not want to look for Nye Kong. She had known Nye Tsong for a long time. She was still considered familiar with him. Previously, when he was still in the Xuanhe prefecture, they had exchanged letters. But after Niet Song came to the capital, Gu Yundong always contacted Nye Shuang. She had not seen Niet Song for a long time. This time, Aunt Ku had given her Niet Song's address so that she could look for him for help if she needed anything. Now she really had to find him. Gu Yundong immediately brought Tong Shui Tao to the Nye family's address. Niet Song seemed to have been promoted as a 7th-grade official in the capital. He had made contributions when he captured the bandit leader during the disaster. Later, he was recommended by Commander Zhao to come to the capital and worked under a general for a year before he was promoted. In the capital, a rank 7 official position was really very small, completely negligible. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1337. Niet Song's wife. However, the Nye family was not just a merchant family. They also had a background, connections and money. Although Niet Song was only an insignificant official now, he was very quick-witted. In the future, when he made meritorious contributions and had qualifications, he could still move forward. Therefore, Niet Song's future was visible. Niet Song's residence was still some distance away from the street where Gu Yundong was. Compared to Gu Yundong's 3-courtyard house, the Nye residence was much larger. After all, the Nye family was rich and had already bought an estate in the capital. When Gu Yundong and Tong Shui Tao stood at the entrance of the Nye residence, it was already past noon. She did not have any invitations, so she could only ask the concierge to help pass on a message. The concierge looked at Gu Yundong apologetically and said, "Madam, you should come another day. We have something on today and young master is not seeing guests." No visitors? Gu Yundong considered whether she should leave or not, but she remembered that her house was far from the Nye family and it was not easy to make a trip there. Hence, she insisted on meeting Niet Song first. She took out a letter from her sleeve and handed it over. "Then I'll have to trouble you to pass this letter to your young master. Tell him that we came from his hometown in Xuanhe Prefecture. His family asked me to pass this letter to him and see if he wants to see me." When the gatekeeper heard that she had come from the Xuanhe Prefecture and had brought a letter from the Nye family, the smile on his face instantly became much more sincere and respectful. He immediately nodded and said, "All right, then wait a moment, madam. I'll be back soon." With that, he ran in with the letter. Gu Yundong waited for less than half a quarter before she saw the concierge running over with Niet Song behind him. After being apart for 2 years, Niet Song looked much darker. She still remembered the first time she saw him at the city gate. Although he was wearing the clothes of a soldier, his face was very tender. He did not look like a soldier. Instead, he looked more like a white-faced scholar. At that time, Gu Yundong had felt that he was a gentleman and polite. He did things at a moderate pace and had been nurtured since he was young. But now he had changed drastically. He walked with large strides and became much leaner and capable. In her eyes, Niet Song was a completely different person. In Niet Song's eyes, Gu Yundong had also changed. He had a deep impression of that thin, small, and exceptionally tenacious little girl back then. He did not expect that after not seeing her for 2 years, not only had she become prettier, but she had also become someone else's wife. Niet Song quickly stood in front of her. "Sister Gu." It was a familiar voice. The barrier between them that they had not seen for 2 years was instantly gone. Gu Yundong suddenly smiled widely. "Young Master Nye, long time no see." Niet Song laughed. "Why are you still calling me Young Master Nye?" He shook his head and turned around, but he didn't see Shao Qingyuan. "Where's your husband?" "He had something to do, so I came alone." Niet Song did not probe further. He quickly moved half of his body aside. "Come in first. Let's talk inside." Gu Yundong led Tong Shui Tao inside. The Nye residence was really big. It was a large courtyard with many servants. Along the way, many people stared at them, as if they were very curious about the woman who had been personally led in by the young master. Gu Yundong keenly saw a servant girl rushing to the backyard. She recalled that Niet Song was now a married man and immediately asked, "I haven't seen your wife yet. Should I meet her first?" If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1338. Second Miss Yen. Gu Yundong thought that Niet Song would agree readily, but he did not expect him to frown when he heard this. After hesitating for a moment, he said, You should meet her, but... He paused and sighed. It's just that she's sick. She's resting in the backyard now. All the more reason for me to go over and take a look. Niet Song nodded. All right, I'll bring you there. As he spoke, he led Gu Yundong to the backyard. Soon they stopped in front of a courtyard called Anha Garden. Gu Yundong immediately saw the servant girl who had run away earlier. She was standing in the courtyard with her head slightly lowered. The two of them entered the courtyard. Gu Yundong stood in the central room while Niet Song walked in first. A servant served tea to Gu Yundong, so she sat outside and waited slowly. Occasionally, low voices could be heard coming from the inner room. It should be Niet Song telling his wife her identity. After a while, Niet Song came out. Sister Gu, come in. With that, he led her into the inner room. There was still the smell of medicine in the room. It seemed that Niet Song was right. His wife was indeed sick. Gu Yundong turned around and saw that a woman had already been helped up. Her forehead was wrapped in gauze and she was leaning against the headboard. She looked over carefully with hazy eyes. Gu Yundong was stunned when she saw her face clearly. Wasn't this the second daughter of the Yin family? Yesterday, when the second daughter of the Yin family alighted from the carriage, although she had only caught a glimpse of her, Gu Yundong was very sure that she was not mistaken. She then looked at the gauze on her forehead and thought of the news that Cui Lan had smashed second Miss Yan's head yesterday. Gu Yundong was speechless. Sister Gu, what's wrong? Is there anything wrong with me? A low voice sounded beside her ear. Gu Yundong suddenly came back to her senses and hurriedly shook her head. No, there's nothing wrong. She smiled. It's just that it's my first time seeing sister-in-law Nya and I was distracted for a moment. Sister-in-law is very beautiful. Yenya immediately lowered her head shyly and whispered, I'm very ugly like this. Sister Gu is the beauty here. As she spoke, she quickly pointed. Sister Gu, sit. I am not feeling well. I can't treat you well. I'm really sorry. Gu Yundong smiled. I was the one who came uninvited and disturbed your recuperation. I'm the one who should say sorry. Niet Song smiled and interrupted their conversation. All right, you don't have to be so polite anymore. It's weird to hear. He turned to Yenya and said, rest well first. Sister Gu just came to the capital. I have something to talk to her about. When you're better, you can ask her out to admire the flowers. Okay. Yenya agreed. Then, the maidservant beside her helped her lie down again. When Gu Yundong and Niet Song walked out of the inner room, she opened her eyes again and looked at their backs. Niet Song led Gu Yundong to the reception pavilion and got someone to serve tea. He smiled and said, I've read Aunt's letter. Are you going to stay in the capital for a long time? Have you found a house? I have many courtyards here. Actually, Gu Yundong knew what he was thinking and quickly interrupted him. We've already bought a house. It's over at Hatai Lane. Hatai Alley. That's not close. Gu Yundong nodded. It's a little far, but the house over there is suitable. By the way, can I ask if sister-in-law's forehead was smashed by Cui Lan? If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1339. By Muzi is still here. Niet Song was stunned. At the mention of this, a trace of disgust flashed across his eyes. However, he quickly asked in surprise, how did you know that Miss Cui was the one who smashed her? Because I was outside the Yen residence yesterday and saw Cui Lan enter with my own eyes. I also saw sister-in-law enter the Yen residence. Later on, there were rumors that Cui Lan and sister-in-law had an argument. Gu Yundong took a sip of tea and said slowly. Niet Song had an I see expression on his face, but he quickly realized that something was wrong. You know Cui Lan? And you stayed outside the Yen residence for an entire day? Why do I feel like you were spying on the Yen residence? Gu Yundong shook his head and laughed. Niet Song was still the same Yekong. Moreover, after 2 years of training he seemed to have become even sharper. She did not hide it and said directly, I do know Cui Lan, and am also keeping an eye on the Yen residence. How come? You know that my mother's head was once injured. That's why she's like a child now. Imperial physician Song said that if we want to cure her, we need a very precious and rare medicine. That medicine is by Muzi. For the past 2 years I've been looking for by Muzi. Later, I learned from Cui Lan that the Yen residence has such a medicine. By Muzi? Niet Song frowned, and his expression immediately became strange. After a long while he sighed and said, By Muzi was used to save my wife yesterday. The Yen residence is also gone. No. Gu Yundong interrupted Nye Kong. Bai Muzi should still be in Yen Yihai's hands right now. He's keeping it well. Nye Tsong looked puzzled. No? Yesterday, after I found out that my wife was injured, I immediately went to the Yen residence and saw the medicine the doctor gave my wife with my own eyes. Then are you sure that it's Bai Muzi? Gu Yundong narrowed her eyes and asked, do you know that there's a medicine in this world that's very similar to Bai Muzi? Do you know Bai Muzi? This question rendered Nye Tsong speechless. He was not a doctor, so it was naturally impossible for him to understand Bai Muzi. It was only now that he learned from Gu Yundong that this medicine was so precious. Nye Tsong felt that something was amiss. He tapped his fingers lightly on the table. After a long while he said, what do you know? How much do you know about Bai Muzi and the Yen residence? Tell me everything. Before I tell you that, can I ask you something else? Gu Yundong suddenly looked at him curiously. This expression made Nye Tsong, who was prepared to accept a huge truth, choke. The seriousness from before disappeared. He asked helplessly, what is it? How did you and sister-in-law become husband and wife? Gu Yundong's eyes were obviously filled with gossip. The corners of Nye Tsong's mouth twitched. He didn't look like he wanted to say anything. Aunt Ke didn't tell you? Gu Yundong shook her head. After she went back, she only mentioned to me that you were married. At that time she was puzzled. Why didn't Nye Tsong return to the Xuanhe prefecture after getting married? Moreover, it seemed that the Nye family was not very satisfied with this marriage. Otherwise, why would Aunt Ku, Madame Nye, and Nye Shuang be the only ones who came to the capital? Old Master Nye had never come. Nye Tsong felt uncomfortable under her gaze. He couldn't bring himself to say such a private matter. But Gu Yundong looked as if she would not say anything unless he confessed. It was really frustrating. Forget it. Nye Tsong heaved a sigh of relief and began to talk about his relationship with Yenya. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1340. Nye Tsong and Yenya. Nye Tsong and Yenya met by accident. Yenya's life in the Yen family was very difficult. She was the very good-looking daughter of an unloved concubine. Naturally she would be bullied by others. Moreover, Yihai had always favored boys over girls. He was ambitious and had never cared about the matters in the backyard. Lady Yen was a shrew. In the capital, there were no in-laws to suppress her, and no sisters-in-law to keep an eye on her. That backyard was her say. If she wanted to torture the concubine, she would torture the concubine. If she wanted to treat the daughter of a concubine badly, she would treat the daughter of a concubine badly. As for Yenya, she was born in the same year as Miss Yen. Mrs. Yen disliked her even more. Therefore Yenya had been suppressed since she was young. Her personality had become abnormally weak, and she seemed to be very careful and did not dare to speak loudly to anyone. When Nye Tsong first met her, Yenya was being bullied by Miss Yen Ling. Nye Tsong couldn't stand it anymore and secretly got someone to help her out. However, deep down Nye Tsong looked down on Yenya. He felt that she was too weak. When faced with trouble, she would retreat and endure as much as she could, as if she had no bottom line at all. Besides, she was good-looking. She would probably die without knowing. After that incident, Nye Tsong threw Yenya to the back of his mind. However, Nye Tsong soon knew where Yenya's bottom line was. At her mother's place, Yenya had never retaliated when she was bullied. However, when her mother was bullied, even though she was afraid and trembled all over, she still dared to resist. At that time, Nye Tsong admired her a little. However, the place where he really interacted with Yenya was at the Yen family. At that time, Nye Tsong was invited by Master Yen to the Yen residence as a guest. After he went, he found out that Master Yen had taken a fancy to him and wanted to betroth his legitimate daughter, Yen Ling, to him. Master Yen knew Nye Tsong's identity. He was the young master of the Nye family in Xuanhe Prefecture. The Nye family and the Yen family also had business dealings. Now that Nye Tsong had become a 7th-grade official and had a superior to promote him, he would definitely be successful in the future. Furthermore, Nye Tsong himself was elegant and handsome. Yen Ling had taken a fancy to him after meeting him once. However, Nye Tsong did not have a good impression of Yen Ling, so he naturally rejected Master Yen tactfully. Yihai didn't say anything on the spot. He just smiled and changed the topic, pretending that he hadn't said anything. Although Nye Tsong was smart, he still lacked some experience in the face of an old fox like Yihai who had been in the business world for many years. He had been set up. The Yan family wanted to catch him in bed with Yan Ling and make them a couple. When Gu Yundong heard this, she stopped drinking her tea. She had probably guessed it. In the end, you and Yenya were caught? Yes. Niet Song did not expect the Yan family to be so impolite. Although they were a merchant family, they had to follow the etiquette and rules. However, the Yan family did not care at all. He really wanted to vomit blood from anger when they did such a thing that damaged their reputation. He was indignant at that time and thought of a way to escape. In the end, he accidentally entered Yenya's courtyard. In the end, he and Yenya were seen by everyone. The other party was Yenya, but Niet Song heaved a sigh of relief. He pitied Yenya in his heart. This pity made him not reject marrying Yenya. If she was weak, so be it. He would spend more effort to protect her or ask the nanny to help her. It was just that getting married to a family like the Yen family made him a little disgusted. However, he had no choice. The matter was settled just like that. To Yihai, although the target had changed from a legitimate daughter to a concubine's daughter, he had achieved his goal of marrying a daughter to Nyekang. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1341. Raised astray. However, to Mrs. Yen and Yen Ling, this was cutting their hearts. They had put in so much effort to design these things, but in the end, it all benefited that little b***tch Yenya. Lady Yen hated Yenya to the core and even wanted to kill her before she got married. Fortunately, Niet Song had also thought of this. He sent the nanny who had followed him to the capital to take care of his daily life to the Yen residence. He said that the Nye residence had many rules and asked the nanny to teach Yenya first so that she would not make a mistake in the future. Otherwise, if word got out, the Yen residence would lose face. Yihai thought of Yenya's unintelligent and timid personality and felt that it made sense, so he agreed. Lady Yen and Yen Ling tried several times, but the nanny caught evidence and brought it to Yihai. Yihai was furious. He wanted to marry into the Nye family, not become enemies. Yenya was already Niet Song's fiancée. If she was killed in the Yen residence and the Nye residence's nanny found out, what was the point of joining the two families? Lady Yen and Yen Ling were grounded until Yenya got married. Niet Song also wrote a letter and sent it to the Nye family of the Xuanhe prefecture. The Nye family was very dissatisfied that he wanted to marry a concubine's daughter who was not favored in a merchant family. It was fine, as the Nye family was not very noble either. However, this concubine's daughter's personality was completely useless. How could she be the future mistress of the Nye family? How could she raise the future descendants of the Nye family and help Niet Song in the future? In their opinion, this kind of personality could only be used as a concubine or the wife of a small family. As the main wife, she should at least be able to hold her head high. Old Master Nye flew into a rage. He was very disappointed that Niet Song could not even see through such a small trap. Therefore, only Madame Nye Shuang and the others went to the capital to resolve this matter and participate in the wedding. Yenya hadn't even seen her father-in-law yet. She felt even more uneasy. Thankfully, Niet Song treated her well. After being taught by the nanny, she finally changed a little. However, how could a personality that had been nurtured for more than 10 years change so much overnight? Gu Yundong sighed after hearing this. It seemed that some of what she had heard in the tea shop must have been spread by Madame Yen on purpose. She had also seen Yenya just now. That woman was indeed a coward. Niet Song should have told her his identity. In the eyes of outsiders, Gu Yundong was just a farmer's daughter-in-law. The second daughter of the Yen family in the capital actually didn't dare to speak loudly in front of her. However, Gu Yundong could not say anything. It was not Yenya's fault that she had become like this. It was obvious that Mrs. Yen had deliberately raised her astray. A native family had a huge impact on a person's personality. It was already not easy for her to muster the courage to protect her mother. Now, can you tell me why you're watching the Yen residence? After talking about his past with Yenya, Niet Song was still a little embarrassed. He touched his nose and coughed lightly. He quickly changed the topic and asked about serious matters. Didn't I tell you? It's for by Muzi. Gu Yundong took a sip of tea and said with a smile. Knowing Niet Song's attitude towards the Yen residence, Gu Yundong was in a good mood. Niet Song frowned. How did you know that the Yen residence had by Muzi? I didn't even know about this. Chui Lan told me. Gu Yundong briefly explained that she had met Chui Lan on the ship, but Chui Lan had taken a fancy to her man and used by Muzi to threaten her to leave Shao Qingyuan. In the end, she was almost killed. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1342. He'll help you. When Yetsong heard this, he did not say anything for a long time. After a long while, the corners of his mouth twitched. You hung Cui Lan over the river for half a day? Forced her to tell you? Gu Yundong rolled her eyes. Is that the main point? And you have to understand that she attacked me first. Do you want me to pretend that nothing happened? Not really. I just realized that you seem to be especially good at turning passive into active. Especially when someone wanted to set her up, she used them in the end. He'll take that as a compliment. Yetsong was speechless. He shook his head to get rid of the messy thoughts in his mind and began to think about Muzi. According to what you said, Muzi is precious, and my father-in-law and uncle don't have a good relationship, so he can't bear to help him repay the favor. He can't bear to give it to the Cui family, so he naturally can't bear to give it to Yenya. So, the more Yetsong thought about it, the uglier his expression became. He suddenly stood up and slammed the table. He's clearly using Yenya to force the Cui family to give up on Muzi. The Yen family didn't suffer any losses and Cui Lan didn't suffer any losses. However, only my wife was innocently implicated. Not only was her head smashed, but she also had to watch the Yen family put on a show of deep father-daughter love for us and blame everything on us. It's simply preposterous. Bastard. No wonder after Imperial physician Cui diagnosed her, they sent him away on the grounds that Miss Cui was the culprit. They found another doctor for Yenya. They were afraid that Dr. Cui would find out that Muzi was not needed to treat her. Yetsong was furious. He lifted his leg and kicked over a stool at the side. The people outside the door heard a crisp sound and could not help but look inside. They saw the young master's ashen face and sharp eyes. All of them immediately looked at Gu Yundong worriedly, thinking that she had made the young master lose his temper. Unexpectedly, Gu Yundong was calmly drinking tea. Instead, she looked very relaxed and was not affected by his anger at all. After a long time, she waved her hand for Yetsong to sit down. Alright, it's useless to lose your temper now. We have to consider this matter at length. Anyway, we can't let your wife suffer, right? Yetsong sat down and drank 2 mouthfuls of tea before gradually calming down. He glanced at Gu Yundong. You want Muzi? Yeah. He'll help you. Cough cough. Gu Yundong choked on her tea. Of course, she hoped that Yetsong would help her. She had thought of a lot of words to convince him, but before she could say a word, he took the initiative to mention it. Gu Yundong did not know whether to laugh or cry. Are you really going to help me? Of course. The Yen residence really thinks him a pushover. It's fine if they bullied Yenya in the past, but at that time she was the daughter of the Yen residence. I couldn't do anything about it. Now she's already my wife and the young madam of the Nye residence. How dare they brazenly find someone to smash her head? Do they think they can touch our Nye residence just because they want to? Yetsong was really disgusted by the Yen family's actions. The problem was that they even pushed the problem onto him. It was said that Yenya's inappropriate words had angered Cui Lan, causing Cui Lan to hit her hard and tell her not to find trouble with the Cui residents. Alright, he would not cause trouble for the Cui residents. He would seek revenge from the Yen residents. Gu Yundong asked him, how do you plan to help? Yetsong thought for a moment. We have to consider this matter at length. He hadn't thought of it yet. Gu Yundong said, actually, I have something else to ask you. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1343, Going Too Far, Go Ahead. Yetsong knew that Gu Yundong had just found out that his wife was the second daughter of the Yen family. There must be something else going on. Gu Yundong pursed her lips. You know, Auntie Dai, Nye Shuang and I opened a milk tea shop in Xuanhe Prefecture. The last time Nye Shuang came to the capital, she bought a shop in the capital and planned to use it to open a milk tea shop. Yes, that's true. I know where the shop is. I'll bring you to take a look later. I've been there, Gu Yundong said. Just now, I went to look at the shop according to the address Nye Shuang gave me, but I realized that the door of the shop was open. An old woman called Mother Chen claimed to be Mrs. Yan's servant. She was introducing the shop to someone. She said that she wanted to rent the shop out for 30 taels a month. What did you say? Yetsong suddenly stood up, a look of astonishment on his face. Gu Yundong asked, The key to the shop. The key to the shop. I asked Yenya to keep it. As expected, Gu Yundong sighed. It seemed that the key had either been coaxed away by Mrs. Yen or taken away under threat. Previously she did not understand. But now Gu Yundong understood what Mrs. Yen was thinking. That shop was empty anyway. If she rented it to someone else she could earn some rent. How could that not do? It didn't matter even if Niet Song found out later. Niet Song could be considered her son-in-law anyway. Could he slap her face in public? Men all cared about their face. It was just an empty shop. It wasn't like the Nye family didn't have money. They could just buy another one later. Perhaps this shop would become hers as she rented it. They're going too far. Niet Song really didn't expect so many things to happen in one day. He turned around. He'll go ask Yenya. Gu Yundong was stunned and quickly pulled him back. She's still injured and timid. If you go over so angrily, she'll think that you're going to denounce her. Won't she be even more afraid in the future? If the couple's relationship was damaged, wouldn't she be the culprit? Niet Song clenched his fists tightly. When he thought of Yenya's personality, he instantly felt discouraged. He sat back down and rubbed his temples. Why did so many things happen just after returning to the Yen residence? He could not stop her in time. So what should we do? Gu Yundong thought for a moment. He'll ask. What's the difference? Speaking of which, he was Yenya's husband. No matter what, Gu Yundong was still a stranger, right? Gu Yundong could not be bothered with him. She stood up, cleaned her clothes and went back to her garden. As expected, Yenya did not sleep. Gu Yundong guessed that she would not be able to sleep at this juncture. When she saw Gu Yundong coming over, she quickly got up again. Gu Yundong immediately stopped her. Yenya turned her head, but she did not see Nye Kong. She was at a loss. She had a feeling that something bad had happened. Gu Yundong secretly exhaled and squeezed out a smile. Her voice became gentler. Sister-in-law, I just found out that you suffered a lot. Your head was smashed by someone. It looks like you bled a lot. How is it? Does it still hurt? To be honest, my husband is also a doctor. He even taught me how to relieve pain. Do you want me to take a look at you? Yenya quickly said, No need, no need. It doesn't hurt. It's just a small injury. It only hurt when I applied the medicine yesterday. It's fine now. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1344. A different version, that's good. When sister-in-law is in pain, you must not hold it in. You must use medicine in time when there are injuries. The more you hold it in, the worse it will be. My husband told me that nothing is more important than your health. Yenya nodded and said softly, Sister Gu and my husband are so close. You and Brother Nye are not bad either. I think he's very concerned about your injuries. Yenya was a little embarrassed, but after talking to Gu Yundong about these topics that she had never mentioned to anyone before, she unknowingly relaxed and the topics gradually increased. Gu Yundong chatted with her for a while before guiding her to talk about the injury on her head and then Chui Lan. Gu Yundong found it strange. What did you say? How dare Chui Lan hit you so hard? Yenya lowered her eyes. Then Gu Yundong heard a different version from Yenya. Chui Lan was indeed talking to Yenya alone in the backyard. Yenya only said that she was married and asked Chui Lan to visit her house when she was free. Yenya had the courage to say those polite words. Unexpectedly, Chui Lan, who was standing behind her, suddenly reached out and pushed her forward. Yenya's head hit the stone table. Therefore she wasn't hit by a rock at all but knocked. For some reason it was completely different outside. Of course, Chui Lan firmly denied that she had done it on purpose. She said that for some reason her foot slipped. She had wanted to pull Yenya to regain balance with her help, but she did not expect to push her back. But these words were not convincing at all. Moreover, even if what she said was true, it was true that Yenya was injured from her push. Gu Yundong's lips curled up mockingly. So that was how it was. She found it strange. Yenya and Chui Lan did not have any deep hatred. They did not know each other in the past. How could Chui Lan be so ruthless to Yenya just because of a few words? However, the Yen family blamed her for saying those words in front of Yenya. Chui Lan had yet to get married, so she must have been provoked by her. It was fine if Yenya got married herself, but she even flaunted in front of Chui Lan. All of this was Yenya's fault. Yenya was actually convinced just like that. Gu Yundong could not help but roll her eyes. This woman was lucky that she had met Niet Song, or she could be easily killed. You were unconscious at that time? Were you conscious when Imperial Physician Chui came? Naturally she wasn't awake. When Yenya woke up, Niet Song was already here. The wound on her head had been bandaged. She didn't even know that Imperial Physician Chui had come to take her pulse. But then I fell asleep again. When I was half asleep, I heard someone talking outside the bed. Mrs. Yen and Yen Ling were the ones who spoke. The two of them were muttering over there, saying that Yihai was biased and actually let her use such a precious by Muzi. In order to save her life, she did not even listen to the old master. The medicine had clearly been promised to be Yen Ling's dowry. Now that the priceless dowry was gone, Yen Ling had suffered a huge loss. Yihai even reprimanded the mother and daughter, saying that Yenya was his daughter after all. Although he didn't dote on her in the past, she was still his biological daughter. How could he watch her die? Not to mention by Muzi, even if it was something even more precious, as a father he would do everything he could to find it. These words made Yenya feel complicated. She felt guilty, touched, and uneasy. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible. Yenya is still injured. Please keep her company. Young master, don't worry. I will take good care of young madam. Then Nanny Chi went to Anha Garden. Previously, Nanny Chi had always protected Yenya when she was by her side in the Yen residence. Later on, after Yenya married into the Nye residence, because of her personality, Nanny Chi was still by her side. She had brought Yenya to handle family matters, but it had only been a short time. In addition, when they got married, the Nye family was not very satisfied with Yenya, so Yenya did not dare to take charge of family matters. This resulted in no progress. Nanny Chi had no choice. Yenya's personality could not be nurtured overnight. She could only slowly change. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1346. Do you dare to make a move? Gu Yundong and Niet Song returned to the hall and asked him, "What are your plans for the Yen residence?" "First, we have to clear Yen Ya's name. Everybody said that it was her own fault that Cui Lan hit her because of Yen Ya's loose tongue. Everybody said that the Yen family had even disobeyed Old Master Yan's orders to save Yen Ya, making Yihai and his wife be blamed by Old Master Yen for being unfilial. Everybody said that the Yen family even took out Yen Ling's dowry to save Yen Ya's life. All of this was clearly a conspiracy, but in the end, Yen Ya had to carry all of the blame. What? Was it because they had not tortured her enough in the past? Now that she was no longer in their control, they had changed their method to shackle her? Dream on. She had to expose these lies one by one so that Yen Ya would no longer feel uneasy about the Yen residence. It also made all the rumors outside transfer to the Yen residence. Yen Ya did not dare to go out now. How could it not be because of these rumors? Except, do you have any ideas? It did not occur to him for a moment. Gu Yundong glanced at him and then at him again. Niet Song felt uncomfortable under her gaze. If you have an idea, just say it. Don't have such an expression. Otherwise, I feel like I'm going to be schemed against. Gu Yundong was speechless. Was her character that bad? Gu Yundong snorted and finally said, "I have an idea. I just want to ask you if you dare to blow this matter up." Blow this matter up? Yeah. I dare. Gu Yundong paused. Even if it blows up, it might put sister-in-law in a difficult situation? Isn't she in a difficult enough situation already? Gu Yundong thought about it and felt that it made sense. In fact, if the matter blew up, the Yen family's reputation would be damaged. Although Yen Ya might be affected, she was already married to Nye Cong. As long as Niet Song's attitude towards her remained unchanged, the impact would be limited. It was better than being schemed against by her family. The good reputation went to Yihai, Mrs. Yen, and Yen Ling's family. In the end, she had to bear all the bad reputation and not even have a friend. Tell me first. What's your idea? Gu Yundong exhaled and told him her plan in a low voice. Niet Song nodded as he listened. A moment later he suddenly clapped his hands. It's feasible. But we still have to rely on sister-in-law for this plan. Tell sister-in-law clearly later and ask her if she agrees. Niet Song said nonchalantly, she will definitely agree. We are doing this for her own good. Gu Yundong, she resisted the urge to roll her eyes. Niet Song, this is the reason why Yenya didn't tell you about those things. You also said that you're husband and wife. Since you're husband and wife, shouldn't you explain these things clearly? Especially since this is closely related to her. Chapter 1347. The Emperor's gift. Gu Yundong's eyes lit up when she saw him and she quickly ran over. Brother Shao, you're back? Yes, I came back in the afternoon. Shao Qingyuan smiled at her, then looked up and nodded at Nye Cong. Long time no see, young Master Nye. Long time no see. I didn't expect the person who was almost arrested and sent to the government office to become Sister Gu's husband. Nye Song still remembered the first time he met him. Shao Qingyuan had been reported as a thief and was captured by 2 constables to the government office. At that time, it should have been the first time Shao Qingyuan and Gu Yundong met. They were quite fated. At the mention of his dark history, Shao Qingyuan's face stiffened for a moment. However, he quickly returned to normal. He nodded at Nye Cong. Thank you for your help back then, young Master Nye. Ha, sure. Nye Song wanted to invite Shao Qingyuan in, but he was rejected. We still have something to do. Well, visit another day. Nye Song did not force them and watched them leave. Shao Wen led the carriage and stood not far away. The 2 of them chatted as they walked towards the carriage. Brother Shao, how did you know that I was in the Nye residence? Shao Wen said that you went to look at the shop, but I didn't see you when I went to the shop. I asked around and heard that an old woman brought people over to rent out the shop. I guess that you might want to ask Nye Song about the situation, so I came over. Shao Qingyuan spoke to Gu Yundong in a completely different tone than he spoke to Nye Cong. Brother Shao, you're getting smarter and smarter. You taught me well. Have you seen Imperial Physician Song? I happen to have something I need his help with. I saw him. They'll bring you there another day. Okay. Nye Song stood at the entrance and watched as their figures got further and further away. He suddenly felt a heavy blow in his heart. This was the first time he had seen a couple interact like this. Perhaps Gu Yundong was right, to be honest. He took a deep breath, turned around and strode towards the Anha garden. Gu Yundong and Shao Qingyuan also got into the carriage. Tong Shuitao sat on the shaft outside. As soon as the carriage moved, Gu Yundong told Shao Qingyuan everything that had happened in the past 2 days. Shao Qingyuan frowned. Nye Song's wife is actually the second daughter of the Yen family? Yeah, I was also shocked when I saw it previously. Then how do you plan to obtain by Muzi? Gu Yundong chuckled. That's why I need Imperial Physician Song's help. Shao Qingyuan couldn't help but pinch her nose. He will definitely help. Even if he didn't help, Shao Qingyuan would persuade him until he changed his mind. Gu Yundong asked about his visit to the Emperor. Actually, there was nothing special. It was just a report on the vaccination. The Emperor was busy every day and didn't have the time to chat with Shao Qingyuan. Moreover, Wenzheng had returned to the capital a few days earlier than them. He had already said what he needed to say. However, before Shao Qingyuan left, the Emperor mentioned Gu Yundong and said that he wanted to see her when he had the chance. By the way, the Emperor also gave you a gift. A gift? Yes, for our wedding. Gu Yundong was instantly interested. Where is it? At home, of course. Shao Qingyuan saw her looking around and laughed. He couldn't bring it with him. Gu Yundong was a little disappointed. Fortunately, the carriage soon arrived at Hutai Alley. After alighting from the carriage, Gu Yundong could not wait to enter the house to see the gift from the Emperor. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1348. Starting today was a jade ruby. Gu Yundong looked at the 2 centimeters long jade ruby in front of her and the corners of her mouth twitched. Alright, she should have known. How novel could the wedding gift that the Emperor had thought of at the last minute be? However, at least this was a reward from the Emperor, so the meaning was different. Gu Yundong touched the jade ruby. They'll find a box and keep it properly. I can't lose this. It's fine as long as you make the decision. Shao Qingyuan looked at her excited expression and felt much better. Gu Yundong searched for a long time but could not find a box. In the end, she found one in her spatial storage and pretended to find it in the corner to keep the jade ruby. After putting it away, Gu Yundong asked about Shao Qingyuan and Imperial Physician Song. Has he left the palace? He left the palace. He came out with me this afternoon. Song Dejiang had been in the palace for the past 2 days because the empress had fallen ill and could not recover. Now that she had finally recovered, Song Dejiang was also exhausted. This was how it was to treat the nobles in the palace. It was not easy to be an imperial physician. Gu Yundong sympathized with Song Dejiang, so her original plan to visit him tomorrow morning was changed to this afternoon. The next morning, Gu Yundong and Shao Qingyuan went to the Nie residence first. He wondered how Nie Tsong and Yenya were doing. When the two of them entered the Nie residence this time, the gatekeeper let them in directly. When Gu Yundong saw Yenya again, she realized that her eyes were a little red and swollen, as if she had cried hard. However, it was also very obvious that the situation between her and Nie Tsong had changed. How should it be put? It was as if the unfamiliar distance from before was gone. Gu Yundong glanced at Nie Tsong, who coughed lightly and blushed. Gu Yundong raised her eyebrows. It seemed that they had had an open talk? Yenya's voice was slightly hoarse. Compared to yesterday, she was much more energetic. She looked at Gu Yundong and said, "Sister Gu, I already know. My husband told me about the Yen residence. I was too stupid to see what was going on. Now I know everything. I think your plan is good." "I agree." Gu Yundong was stunned and confirmed again. "Do you know what you might face after this plan?" "I know. Maybe. I don't have a family anymore." Yenya lowered her head slightly and smiled bitterly. "Actually, I don't have a family now. After a woman was married, her family was her backing, which was to stand up for her after she suffered from her in-laws, so that she would have a way out after being bullied. However, with Yenya, her maternal family was the one who really pulled her into eternal damnation. Then your mother?" Gu Yundong knew that she still had someone she could not let go of. Yenya raised her head and smiled. "She doesn't have much attachment to the Yen family to begin with. If it weren't for the fact that she couldn't bear to part with me, she would have wanted to go to a Taoist temple to cultivate a few years ago. After I got married, she planned to go. I thought too simply that my father would more or less care about my current status. I thought that her life would be better." Unexpectedly, her father did not mind sacrificing her for Muzi. It was obvious that her mother's life in the residence was not easy either. Gu Yundong sighed inwardly. However, she was relieved that Yenya had really gotten over it. She looked at Nie Cong. "Then shall we start tomorrow?" "No need. Let's do it today. The earlier the better." Nie Tsong narrowed his eyes, his lips curling into a cold smile. "If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 1349. Things have been made big. Everyone's opinions were unanimous, and the rest was easy. After Gu Yundong and Shao Qingyuan left the Nie residence, they went straight to look for Song Dejiang. As for Nie Tsong, he came to the Chui residence aggressively, wanting to settle scores with Chui Lan. Imperial physician Chui and his daughter, who originally thought that everything was over, were stunned when they saw him bringing people to attack them. Nie Tsong pointed at Chui Lan and scolded, "My wife had no grievances with you. She only said that she was getting married and kindly invited you to her house as a guest. How did she offend you? How did these 2 sentences offend you that you were so ruthless to her and wanted to kill her?" Chui Lan's face turned pale. When Nie Tsong came to look for her, all the neighbors nearby had come to watch the commotion. When they heard this, they immediately started whispering. Chui Lan's reputation was not good to begin with. She did not have a smile on her face all day long, and she basically did not respond to her neighbors' greetings. As time passed, everyone felt that this person was not easy to get along with. Especially after Chui Lan started studying medicine and ran around with her father to treat men, she did not know how to avoid it at all, so everyone looked at her even more strangely. 2 days ago, what happened in the Yen residence had actually spread here. Although Chui Lan had explained, no one believed her. No one knew where the rumors came from, but they said that she ran to someone's house and smashed the Yen family's daughter's head with a stone. This was terrible. Was there something wrong with this girl's brain? Hence, the Chui father and daughter did not go out for the past 2 days and stayed at home obediently. Unexpectedly, Nie Tsong came knocking on their door and shouted loudly even though they were keeping a low profile. It was ridiculous. Imperial physician Chui was so angry that his entire body was trembling. He stood in front of Chui Lan and said, "Nonsense, you're simply spouting nonsense. My daughter didn't harm Madame Yen at all. She slipped and accidentally pushed your wife, causing her to hit the stone table. How did she become ruthless?" Chui Lan, who was standing behind him, also defended herself loudly. Yes, I accidentally slipped. I didn't push her at all. I didn't. Don't slander me here. Get out, get out. Accidentally pushed her? Why is it completely different from what my father-in-law said? Besides, how can it be so coincidental that you slipped after my wife said that? Who would believe that? Let me tell you, my wife is unconscious now. As her husband, I will definitely not let this matter rest. You, Imperial Physician Chui was furious. I don't know what Master Yen said, but this was an accident. You make it sound so nice. Can an accident offset a life? The magistrate swept his gaze across the people in the hall one by one. A moment later he began to ask, from the beginning Madame Yen was pushed to the ground and injured. Now Madame Chui said that she accidentally pulled Madame Yen after she slipped, but Master Yen also said that Madame Chui was agitated and deliberately attacked. Both sides have their own arguments, but they can't prove themselves. In my opinion, why don't we go to the scene and reconstruct what happened to see whose confession is more reasonable? Actually, in the eyes of the magistrate, what Master Yen said was quite problematic. After all, who would suddenly go crazy and attack after hearing 2 sentences? If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1352, Song Dejiang appears. How do you prove it? Niet Song asked cooperatively. Imperial Physician Chui narrowed his eyes slightly. Let me take young Madame Niece's pulse again. I can tell if she has used by Muzi. Yihai's expression changed slightly. Then he rejected him even more righteously. That's impossible. If you take her pulse, what if you have selfish motives and play tricks? I don't agree. However, the magistrate nodded and said, I think Imperial Physician Cui's method is feasible, but Master Yen is right. Imperial Physician Chui is involved, so it's not appropriate to diagnose Lady Yen. Just find another doctor. Sir, Lady Yan's injuries are serious. Ordinary doctors might not be able to tell. Imperial Physician Chui frowned. He did not object to looking for others, but it was useless if they could not tell. However, Imperial Physician Chui was an imperial physician. How many doctors were better than him? Niet Song pursed his lips and looked at a subordinate behind the magistrate. The subordinate nodded slightly and went to the magistrate's side. Sir, I heard that Imperial Physician Song left the palace yesterday and is resting at home. Why don't we try and ask Imperial Physician Song for help? Imperial Physician Cui's eyes lit up. That's right, wasn't Imperial Physician Song a ready-made candidate? Imperial Physician Song? The magistrate frowned. That guy has a very strange temper. It's rare for him to take a break. If we disturb him, I'm afraid he won't help. Lord, I heard that Imperial Physician Song loves to treat difficult illnesses. Look, Madame Yen is currently in a coma, so it can be considered a difficult illness. Furthermore, as the head of the Imperial Hospital, Imperial Physician Song has the responsibility to cooperate with our investigation when he finds out that his Imperial physicians are involved in the case, right? The magistrate felt that it made sense and nodded. Indeed. Cold sweat broke out on Yihai's forehead when he heard that. Ask Imperial Physician Song to come over? No, my lord, Imperial Physician Chui is on good terms with Imperial Physician Song. Who knows if he will cover up for him? Shut up. The magistrate suddenly shouted angrily, Imperial Physician Song is the head of the Imperial Hospital appointed by the current emperor. The emperor personally said that Imperial Physician Song is benevolent and fair. You haven't even seen him yet and you dare to question Imperial Physician Song's morals. I think you're clearly guilty. Yihai broke out in cold sweat after being shouted at by the magistrate. He hurriedly knelt down and said, I was careless and said something wrong. Please forgive me. The magistrate snorted coldly. Get up. We'll talk about whether you're guilty when Imperial Physician Song comes. Don't say anything else about Imperial Physician Song covering up for anybody. Otherwise, according to you, I've worked with Imperial Physician Chui before. Do you think he'll cover up for him too? I wouldn't dare, I wouldn't dare. Yihai stood up, but his head was lowered and his heart was trembling. It was over. He was done for. His mind was spinning crazily, trying to think of some useful way to get through. However, the capital magistrate had already sent someone to invite Imperial Physician Song. He originally thought that Imperial Physician Song would decline. He did not expect him to come immediately. Imperial Physician Song even asked very professionally, "Where is the patient?" Nye Tsong led everyone into the Nye residence. The capital magistrate also brought Imperial Physician Chui, Master Yen, and the others in. However, they stopped at Anha Garden. The magistrate sent an old woman to follow Song Dejiang into the inner room. Yenya lay on the bed. Her face was pale and her breathing was very weak. Nye Tsong sat on the edge of the bed and grabbed one of Yenya's hands. He looked up at Song Dejiang eagerly. "If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible." The magistrate hurried forward and asked, "How is it?" Song Dejiang flew into a rage on the spot and said, "Nonsense, this is simply nonsense, too ridiculous. How can you treat illnesses like this? You're simply not thinking clearly. You don't take human lives seriously." The magistrate hurriedly got an old woman to pour him a cup of tea. After he drank it, he asked, "How is it? Can you tell the seriousness of Madame Yan's injuries? Did she use by Muzi?" Yen Yihai and Imperial Physician Chui immediately became nervous. Song Dejiang slammed the table on the spot. "Of course she's never used by Muzi. Not only has she never used that, but she's also used the wrong medicine." "What do you mean?" The magistrate glanced at the pale Yen Yihai and asked, "If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 1354. Scapegoat. Song Dejiang snorted coldly. Young Madame Ni's injuries weren't serious to begin with. Although she injured her brain by hitting the rock, as long as she was treated well and rested for a few days, she would be fine. By Muzi wouldn't be needed for that injury at all. However, she happened to meet a quack who used other medicine on her. Not only did her originally wound not heal, but it even festered and caused pus. The more he spoke, the angrier he became. You have to know that the human brain is very complicated to begin with. Even us imperial physicians don't dare to be disrespectful when faced with such a situation. We have to be very careful. Otherwise, if we're not careful, such a wound might directly cause people to fall unconscious, blind, deaf, and all kinds of illnesses. The current young Madame Nye is in the worst situation. Her condition is already very serious. If we delay any longer, I'm afraid, the magistrate hurriedly asked, then what should we do? Imperial Physician Song sighed. Originally, young Madame Ni's injuries didn't require by Muzi. Now, only by Muzi can save her. When Imperial Physician Chui heard this, he said on the spot, "Master Yin, what else do you have to say?" "Lord, you heard it. Master Yin didn't use that medicinal herb on Madame Yen at all back then. Madame Yan's previous injuries weren't serious either. All of this was orchestrated by the Yen family. They used their biological daughter to frame my daughter just to keep the Bai Muzi for themselves." Before the magistrate could speak, Nye Tsong had already rushed forward. He didn't care if Master Yen was his father-in-law at all. He grabbed the man's collar and said with a livid expression, "Are you still human? That's your daughter, your biological daughter. It's fine if you used her, but why didn't you treat her injuries properly? She's now the madam of my Nye family. Do you have any respect for my Nye family?" As he spoke, he clenched his fists as if he was about to punch him. The magistrate hurriedly pulled him back. There was no choice. There were not many people in the courtyard of Anha Garden. He could only stop it himself. Calm down, calm down. Young Master Nye, now is not the time to be rash. The most important thing is to quickly treat your wife's injuries." Nye Tsong struggled for a while but could not break free. He gradually calmed down. He glared at Yen Yihai. "Where's Bai Muzi? Since Bai Muzi is still in your hands, quickly hand it out and help Imperial Physician Song save Yenya." Yen Yihai gritted his teeth and looked up, wanting to say something. The magistrate narrowed his eyes. "Yen Yihai, now that the evidence is conclusive, what else do you have to say? It's a fact that you slandered Imperial Physician Chui and his daughter and severely injured young Madame Nye. Come back to the government office with me and explain the matter clearly." Yen Yihai choked on his words. He clenched his fists and turned to look at Mrs. Yen. Lady Yen met his meaningful gaze and immediately felt a chill in her heart. They had been husband and wife for many years. What did she not understand? Old master wanted her to take the blame. But Lady Yen hesitated. After everyone returned to the government office, the magistrate began the interrogation again. Yihai looked at Mrs. Yen a few times. In the end, Mrs. Yen could not withstand the pressure and could only cry out and admit all her crimes. Lord, please spare my life. I was blinded by greed and did not want by Muzi to fall into the hands of others. I also hated Yenya for marrying a good husband and was afraid that she would come back for revenge after a good life. That's why I had bad thoughts. All of this is my fault. Master, he did not know. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible. She didn't even care about the pain of her injuries. She bared her teeth and scolded him. What's the use of that little bit of money you gave me? Aren't you the one who controls the money at home? I'm the mistress of the household and I manage the huge Yen residence. I only have so little money. What can I do? There are shops at home, but do you want me to manage them? You still have the cheek to criticize me. You bastard, I've already taken the blame. Before she could finish speaking, Yihai stopped her. All right. There's no need to shout about this everywhere. We'll talk about it when we get back. You're still injured. Then he turned to Niet Song and said, he'll get someone to send the key to you when we get back. You should hurry back too. Yenya is still waiting for you at home. Although Lady Yen was unwilling, she still snorted and stopped talking. After the Yen family left, Niet Song only watched from afar. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1356. Falling out. After this incident, Niet Song had completely fallen out with the Yen residents. Although they were still father and son-in-law on the surface, they both knew in their hearts that this was Yen Yihai's idea and Mrs. Yen had taken the blame. Niet Song was angry and did not interact with the Yen residents, so Yen Yihai could not say anything. However, Yen Yihai definitely couldn't bear to part with a big tree like the Nye family. Especially after this incident, the Yen family's reputation would definitely be damaged, and their business would probably plummet. After all, no one wanted to do business with someone with a problematic reputation. This time they had really suffered a double loss. Because of this, Yen Yihai was even more unwilling to give up on the Nye family. It didn't matter. Their relationship was stiff now because Niet Song was in a fit of anger. However, Yen Ya's mother was still in the residence and Yen Ya had that kind of personality. Recently, she would be cold to Lady Yen and doted on his concubine. Later he would ask her to persuade Yen Ya and they would be meeting again soon. However, Yen Yihai did not expect this. As soon as he returned home, he heard from his servant that aunt who had heard that master had almost killed Yen Ya for a medicinal herb. She was disheartened and decided to cultivate in a Taoist temple. Now she had packed her bags and was ready to leave. Yen Yihai was furious when he heard that. He ran to concubine Hu's courtyard angrily, wanting her to give up on cultivating. However, aunt who held the hairpin to her neck and threatened to kill herself. Yen Yihai was shocked when the usually weak woman suddenly became so crazy. For a moment he did not know what to do. He had encountered too many things today, causing his mind to be in a mess. However, at this moment, Niet Song came to the door again, saying that he was worried and wanted to personally retrieve the key. When he heard that aunt who had almost committed suicide, he immediately rushed over and said that Yen Yihai was going to vent his anger on aunt who due to the loss of Muzi. She took the key and protected aunt who as she left the Yen residence. Yen Yihai did not dare to push it too far. If something happened to aunt who, the Yen family would be worse off if word got out. They would no longer have a place in the capital. Therefore, when Niet Song left with aunt who, Yen Yihai did not stop her. He thought that it would be good for her to calm down first. He did not expect that once she left she would never have the chance to come back. Because the Taoist temple that concubine who went to later had a background, the Abbey Dean was once the eldest princess. Chapter 1357. Killing 3 birds with 1 stone. Song Dejiang snorted. There's nothing wrong with you. She's the one with the problem. As he spoke he pointed at Yundong. Yundong looked innocent. What's wrong with me? I got by Muzi myself. You still dare to say that you're doing this for by Muzi? You clearly know that I'm on good terms with Imperial Physician Chui, yet you still want me to deceive him. Song Dejiang was exasperated. How can I face him in the future? Imperial Physician Song, you can't say that. Gu Yundong's expression was even more upright as she said in all seriousness, if it weren't for me, Imperial Physician Chui and his daughter would still be scolded by the neighbors. My plan was for you to lie, but this is a white lie. Look, Chui Lan has also been proven innocent. Since I've helped her, it's not too much for me to take by Muzi as a reward, right? Song Dejiang couldn't win against her, but she was right. He snorted and turned his head. He happened to see Yenya beside him. He did not expect Yenya to agree with him and even look at Gu Yundong with slight envy and admiration. Actually, at first, Yenya did not know that Gu Yundong had thought of this method. She only thought that she and Nyet Song had discussed it together. Only later did Nyet Song tell her. Although Gu Yundong's main goal was by Muzi, her plan was to kill 3 birds with 1 stone. Yenya had always stayed in the Yen residence and had never seen such an intelligent woman like Gu Yundong. Nyet Song also noticed her gaze. Perhaps because they had a good chat yesterday, he knew more about Yenya. Previously, he wanted Yenya to learn from Nanny Chi. Nanny Chi was capable and could always influence Yenya subtly. However, he had forgotten that Nanny Chi was a servant, and Yenya was the master, but she was also a master who was not recognized by the elders of the Nye family. Therefore, Nanny Chi could not treat Yenya lightly. Instead, she was restrained and must watch her distance to her master. Now that she had met Gu Yundong, Nyet Song felt that this was fate. Therefore, he whispered into Yenya's ear, "Do you think she's very powerful?" "Yeah." Nyet Song smiled. "She did a lot of things. I'll tell you slowly in the future." Just the fact that she had escaped to Xuanhe Prefecture with her family was not something ordinary people could do. But if you want to see it with your own eyes, you can chat with her more. Sister Gu is going to open a milk tea shop in the capital. You've heard of it? It's the milk tea shop that Nye Shuang mentioned to me. When the time comes, you can follow her to take a look. Is that really possible? Gu Yundong naturally heard their conversation. Facing Yenya's expectant gaze, she secretly heaved a sigh of relief. However, she smiled and nodded. Of course. But in the eyes of outsiders, you're still recuperating. It's better to go out later. Coincidentally, my shop needs to be renovated. They'll bring you to take a look when it's done. Yenya's eyes lit up slightly. She was a little excited and embarrassed as she said softly, "Thank you." Yenya had grown up without any friends because of her status, and Yenling Gu Yundong was the first. After making a deal and seeing that Yenya still needed to rest, the few of them stood up and walked out. Song Dejiang held the Bai Muzi in his hand. "Leave this with me for now. I'll treat it first. I can't leave the capital now. Ask your mother to come to the capital sometime. I'll treat her. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible." Don't you have a lot of things to do too? You still have to look for Song Dejiang tomorrow to learn medicine from him. Since Shao Qingyuan had come to the capital, it was rare for him to meet someone as skilled as Song Dejiang. Naturally, he had to learn some skills from him. Moreover, Song Dejiang liked to discuss medicine with Shao Qingyuan. He realized that Shao Qingyuan was especially smart in this aspect. Sometimes, when he went to a dead end, Shao Qingyuan would change his direction and give him ideas. Therefore, after Shao Qingyuan entered the palace, Song Dejiang refused to let him go. Even though they had only discussed for a day, both sides had gained a lot. Actually, part of the reason why Song Dejiang helped so readily this time was because of Shao Qingyuan. After all, he was the head of the Imperial Hospital. If he was exposed for doing such a thing, the consequences would be serious. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know reports so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1359. Mrs. Yusong Dejiang had been on leave for the 2 days, so he naturally wanted to take this opportunity to continue discussing with Shao Qingyuan. Gu Yundong knew that he liked medicine, so she could not wait to take on everything. She wanted him to focus on learning and work hard to learn all of Song Dejiang's skills. After all, this was a rare opportunity. Shao Qingyuan knew what she was thinking, and his heart instantly ached. He couldn't help but tighten his grip on her. None of my matters are as important as yours. Gu Yundong smiled and kissed him. Alright, I promise you. I'll take my time and do one thing at a time. First Before she could finish speaking, Shao Qingyuan pressed her down. First of all, we should have a child. The blanket was lifted. Before Gu Yundong could hide the shock on her face, it was covered by the blanket. The sky darkened and the house was filled with spring. Gu Yundong woke up late the next day. Shao Qingyuan had already gone out. She could not help but rub her back. Suddenly she felt lazy and did not want to get up. She did not want to go out. Anyway, Shao Qingyuan had told her to take it slow. He had worked so hard last night. Gu Yundong was a little indignant. She might as well rest at home today and not go anywhere. When Tong Shuitao came in, she saw her miss lying on her back on the bed, looking at the bed curtains above her head and thinking about life. She couldn't help but be curious. Miss, what's wrong? It's fine. I'm just a little lazy and don't want to get up. Tong Shuitao immediately went to her side and asked, Then should I bring you food? Might as well. Tong Shuitao went out. Gu Yundong put on a cloak and walked to a shelf to rinse her mouth and wash her face. After washing up, she went back to bed. It was already cold in the capital at this time of the year. It was early October and no one knew when it would snow in the capital. Not long after, Tong Shuitao brought in hot porridge and buns. Miss, when I went out this morning I walked around the alley. I bought these buns at the entrance of the alley. I saw that the business there was especially good. I heard that it's an old business in Yihai Alley. It's been selling buns for many years. The skin is thin and the filling is big. Gu Yundong took it and tore open a corner. Instantly, gravy flowed out. The skin was indeed thin and the filling was big. It looked quite appetizing. Miss, is it good? Yes, it's not bad. Buy some again tomorrow. Tong Shuitao was overjoyed. Sure. Gu Yundong ate porridge and buns at the same time. After eating and drinking her fill, she wanted to cover herself with a blanket and listen to Tong Shuitao talk about the novelty of Yihai Alley. Unexpectedly, her plan to stay in bed for the entire day was foiled. Someone knocked on the door outside. Chapter 1360. Qin Wenzheng, the big tree. Gu Yundong smiled and went forward. You must be sister-in-law Yu. I'm sorry to have kept you waiting. Sister Gu, please don't say that. I came to disturb you without telling you in advance. Please don't take offense. How come? I saw that you guys had just moved in, so I came to take a look. I wanted to come over a few days ago, but I saw that you guys went out early in the morning and looked very busy, so I didn't come. You didn't go out today, so I made some bean buns at home for you to try. Don't despise them. Mrs. Yu pushed the basket on the table forward and smiled. Gu Yundong hurriedly smiled. How can I do that? I've troubled sister-in-law Yu. Sigh, we'll be neighbors in the future. There's no need to worry. I see that you've just arrived. If you need any help in the future, just look for us. Gu Yundong nodded. Then I won't stand on ceremony. There's no need to stand on ceremony. By the way, where are you guys from? Gu Yundong saw that she looked like she wanted to chat and felt a little helpless. However, the other party did not have any ill intentions. She also wanted to understand the situation in Yihai Alley, so she chatted with her. We came from the Xuanhe Prefecture. Xuanhe Prefecture? That's far away. It's your first time in the capital, so you have to be more careful. People will freeze to death in another 10 days or so. You have to prepare the charcoal first or your lives won't be easy. Alright, thank you for your reminder, sister-in-law. Mrs. Yu waved her hand. What kind of reminder is that? I was just saying. By the way, what are you guys doing in the capital? Is your man preparing to participate in the imperial examination? Gu Yundong's mouth twitched. You think too much. It was not the time to come to the capital to participate in the imperial examination. Moreover, Yihai Alley was lively and noisy. It was not suitable for students to buy a house and live there. Gu Yundong smiled. No, we're just here to open a small shop and do some small business. I see. Mrs. Yu nodded. She knew what to do. Then I have to tell you first. It's not easy to do business in the capital, especially opening a shop. It's best to find a backer. Otherwise someone will find trouble. Right? Gu Yundong frowned. Mrs. Yu was right. Whether it was in Fengkai County or the Xuanhe Prefecture, she did have someone backing her up. Although the shop in the capital was also in partnership with Madame Dai, Nye Shuang, and the others, most of their forces were in the Xuanhe Prefecture. Moreover, there were too many high-ranking officials and nobles in the capital. Her milk tea shop was unique. Who knew how many people would covet it? She had no foundation in the capital. If she opened her business rashly, she would easily become a fat piece of meat in the eyes of others. Chapter 1365. I want this shop. The next morning, Gu Yundong brought Tong Shuitao directly to the Qin residence. Unexpectedly, not long after they left, Carpenter Pang's disciple called Pang Shan hurriedly ran over and knocked on the door. Shao Qingyuan was reading a medical book. Song Dejiang had given it to him the day before yesterday and asked him to read it first before discussing it with him. Shao Qingyuan was very interested in this medical book. Hearing the knock on the door, Shao immediately went to open it. Pang Shan, who was at the door, staggered and almost fell in. Shao quickly supported him and asked, "Why are you so flustered? What happened?" Pang Shan swallowed his dry throat and said in a panic, Someone came to the shop to cause trouble. Master is not allowed to work." Shao frowned and quickly brought him to look for Shao Qingyuan. When Shao Qingyuan heard this, he narrowed his eyes slightly, put down the medical book and walked towards the door. "Let's go to the shop to take a look." Shao Wen and Pang Shan hurriedly followed. Fortunately, they were not too far from Jinlan Street and arrived not long after. At this moment, there were already a few people poking their heads out and pointing at the entrance of 68 Jinlan Street. At this moment, there were two groups of people confronting each other in the shop. On one side was Master Pang and his disciple, and on the other side, it looked like they were deliberately looking for trouble with 5 or 6 people. The leader was dressed well, like a young master from a rich family. Behind him were his servants. At this moment, this young master-like person sized up Carpenter Pang from head to toe. His eyes were filled with disdain as he said condescendingly, "I'll say it again. I have bought this shop. I'll naturally get someone to repair it later. You guys should leave." Carpenter Pang's face turned red. He was not good with words to begin with, and this disciple beside him was mute. However, he was the one who signed the contract. How could he leave so easily? "Young Master Tang, I've already discussed it with the boss. I don't care if you've discussed it or not. Anyway, I'll leave my words here. If you continue to work here, I won't be polite to you. Think about it yourself. Should you leave now or should I get someone to throw you out?" Young Master Tang was also very unhappy. He had long taken a fancy to this shop. However, he did not expect that he would act too late. Just a day later, the shop was bought by a woman surnamed Nye. He had asked around. That woman surnamed Nye was not from the capital. Her family was in Shuanhe Prefecture and she was rich. That was why she came to the capital to buy a shop. Her only backer in the capital was her brother, Nye Tsong, who was a 7th grade official. It was just a 7th rank official. Young Master Tang didn't fancy him.